Welcome to another edition of the Royal Alliance UK podcast, episode 285, NFL Cutdown Day 2024. My name's Matthew Turner alongside Anthony Fitzpatrick. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing good, thanks. Hope you're doing well too.
Doing very well, and maybe one of our most exciting days of the year every single time. One of the reasons for that is that it's one of our biggest audiences normally of the year because it is the NFL Cutdown Day, as every team has to get from 90 players to 53, and we are live on YouTube and Twitch, going through all the cuts and taking your questions all the way through the night as the cuts come in. And we are about halfway through as we stand the cuts that the Lions have to make already. We are actually going to cover a little bit of news, and then we're going to go briefly through the Pittsburgh preseason game before looking at the cuts we've made so far, looking at the cuts other NFL teams have made to see whether we can pick anyone up of value, since it looks very much like the Lions are running with 4 wide receivers in the 53 so far. But first, let's go through our preamble as normal. Please do join our Discord channel if you're watching us for the first time. It's a great community of Lions fans, in fact, fans from all around the NFL. And just click the link in the live chat on YouTube and Twitch right now, and you can join us there. College Football Podcast, and coming up this week, what are you talking about?
Week 0 has been and gone. So we'll be having a look back at all the week 0 fixtures, and then we'll be taking a look to the first proper week of the season, week 1. That's where everybody starts playing. So yeah, we actually get to talk some real college ball this week. Some games that happened, there were some shocks, there were some great games, so it's going to be good fun.
And of course, Florida State had a fantastic game in Ireland.
They did, and I've got a wonderful title for the show to replicate that. So yeah, you're gonna have to come and see what it is. But I'm quite proud.
The Florida State Seminoles?
No.
Oh, I was quite.
I put plenty of time and effort into doing those ones, so you'll appreciate it.
Fair. Please do, if you are in the chat, get your questions in. We've gone cold open today for the first time in a while on the main show, and we need, because it's going to be a long show, your questions to get into all the way through the night. Please don't forget to like this episode, sub to the podcast, all that good stuff. You guys know what to do, and you know what it means to us to do that as well. We've got 1,500 subscribers on YouTube, and every little bit that you guys can do helps us promote that to the rest of the Lions fans that haven't found us yet. Don't forget as well to follow Lions Nation Unite. That's Herman Moore's project to bring the best in Lions content creators together. You will find Ant there fairly often, along with a fantastic array of Lions YouTubers, and Herman's making lots more appearances on there as well. So go and find them on their YouTube. They're doing some fantastic stuff. We're Twitch-affiliated, YouTube monetized. There's a tip jar in the description on YouTube below. So if you do want to show some love that way, that's fantastic. But feedback form down there as well if you've got ideas for any content. Let's get into some news. And first of all, some really interesting and fantastic news. And for the Lions, DJ Reader, he's not going on PUP, or he's been activated from the PUP before this process has happened. If he was on the PUP, he'd have to be off for the first 4 weeks. As it is, it looks like they think he's going to come back within that time frame.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun, hopefully, to have him back sooner rather than later. And, I've got 3 of the first 4 games at home. It's, critical that we try and win as many of those as possible. And to have pretty much a fully healthy starting team will be really good for this side, even if it can only play rotational snaps to start with. We've got plenty to work with on the interior. We can get a great committee going in there, and we'll be hopefully up to full strength. And hopefully by the time the bye's come and gone, ready for the big long slog part of the season, it's all behind him, and he's ready to just put the hammer down. So it's great for this team.
He's just going to open up so much, and I want him to get some reps so Aleem is used to the amount of freedom that he's going to get with Reader there, because they haven't taken a snap together in practice yet. And Aleem's gonna, maybe we're over preparing him. He's going to be going into these games with Reader alongside him going, I'm one-on-one against the weaker of the two, and I'm messing shit up. Like, I'm wrecking these guys, and I hope it can be for the Rams even on a limited basis, but it looks like week 2 is maybe a bit of a bigger hope. Inside the Den, episode 3 was also released, Keeping a Winning Culture. I have to confess, I haven't actually got there to it yet, but a bigger announcement actually about Inside the Den and was that the team announced that they weren't going to be doing a draft behind the scenes show because of the deep run that they made into the postseason last year, and it constrained their schedule to the point where they didn't feel like they could do it justice. So a bit of a shame for Lions fans, no more so than Ashley Soden, who lives and dies by that stuff. It's a shame we're not getting that access during the draft because it's always been quite illuminating, even if very manicured.
I mean, sometimes it is, but a lot of the times it's just him phoning the player. Do you want to be a Lion? Yeah, great, all that sort of stuff. I'm not as bothered. Like, I just prefer watching the games. I wasn't able, I've not watched the latest one either. They are good shows, but I'm not one of those who lives and dies by them. I can do without it. It's just Lions football's back now. That's all I really care about, having watching us kick other teams on the football field. So yeah, I'm not too fussed. I'm going to say.
And just talking about roster cuts briefly in terms of the rules about this, the teams could have 90 players on the roster and still can have 90 players on their roster, but by 4 p.m. Eastern Time, as we speak, that is an hour and 24 minutes from now, must be down to 53. That is everyone on the active roster. So, of course, if they make it onto a reserve list, and they will not be on that active roster, despite still being owned by the team in that way. New signings can be made Wednesday, that's tomorrow, if you're listening live, at noon Eastern Time. So we have to wait a little under a day, 20 hours from cut down deadline time until everyone can be signed again, and that's practice squad, active roster, whatever you like. So there we go. That's how that's going to work. We're going to talk about the Pittsburgh game very briefly, just about how some players did, the performance, about the kind of bubble players and whether they put the cat amongst the pigeons in terms of whether we were going to keep them. Even the players that have already been cut, some of them made a really good play for it. So let's bring up the stats from that game on the graphic. It finished Pittsburgh Steelers 17, Detroit Lions 24. Kyle Allen was the leading passer for Pittsburgh. He only actually had 3 catches from his passes, but for 68 yards. Cordarrelle Patterson had limited reps, but he was the leading rusher, 3 carries for 31 yards and a touchdown. And Des Fitzpatrick had himself a day before being yanked after about 8 snaps. But he managed to catch 2 of 2 thrown his way for 64 yards. I think both of them were over Stephen Gilmore, who himself had a really good day in run defense. The Lions scored 24 points, and it was an up-and-down day for Hooker. He started off pretty slowly, but he actually ended up with a reasonable stat line of 12 receptions on 20 passes, 114 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. He also had a fumble in there, as well as 10 carries for 93 yards, which led the team on the ground. The main man for touchdowns was running back Jermar Jefferson, who, as of the time of recording, is still on the roster. 9 carries for 29 yards and 2 touchdowns. And the leading receiver, Maurice Alexander, 4 of 4 for 60 yards. And Lions kind of got themselves in a hole a bit early, but Pittsburgh played their ones against our threes in the main. I mean, even people like Ben Neiman didn't get a snap, who was a core kind of second teamer for us. So it was very much men against boys to start. And as soon as the Steelers starters were yanked, including Russell Wilson having a series and Fields having 2 before the backup quarterbacks came on, the Lions really then came into their own and dominated the game.
Yeah, they bounced back really well. We kind of got worried, 2 drives, 2 touchdowns early doors. They weren't helped by the turnover, which put them in bad field position, and you kind of feared for it. Then you kind of got, oh, this is last preseason game vibe. It's, a lot of things have been decided. A lot of players are just not there anymore. But like you say, they did when it leveled out. Like, most of these guys are, a lot of them periphery guys on the roster who might just sneak in, but certainly no starters really by any and all counts. And they performed incredibly well. Like, the offensive line did really well in the circumstances. It gave our running backs a chance to run. It gave Fromm time to throw the ball when he was in, and Hooker as well. Receivers showed up, played really well. And then on the defense, they were There's some good plays by the secondary. We got burned a few times big early on, but then they sort of clamped it down a little bit as the game went on. They made some good plays, and yeah, it was good to see the mentality for them to bounce back and win it. Obviously, it doesn't really matter whether you win or lose the preseason games, but it's all about the attitude in which the game is played, and they played it with the right attitude. They fought through it. They fought back and they got the win. And it's made today, I think, incredibly difficult for Brad. I mean, very few of the offensive linemen have gone yet. So many of the undrafted guys, so many of the fringe guys have really put themselves in that conversation that I think that's a lot more difficult now than what they were anticipating. The linebackers really showed out again. It's really a shame for the likes of Beauplan and Summers, etc., because they've played really well, but they've come into a room which was sewn up really at the end of last season. We've got our five guys for this year. They're all healthy, and even linebacker five, it's incredibly hard to knock him off the roster because he's an elite special teamer as well as been a good first teamer. You've really got to play out your skin to get in there. So but they still fought. These guys still fighting for whether it be a roster spot somewhere else or whether it be a 53 spot here. I know they want to bring a couple of the guys back who've gone. So, but just sort of epitomized how tough this team has fought. Like the edge rushers have been trying really hard, the linebackers tried hard, secondary, so many questions now to be answered about who's going because of how people have been playing. Yeah, it was just the right attitude shown in the game, and it was enjoyable, which is the first time we can say that about a Steelers game in a very, very long time.
Yeah, it was a really interesting game, and I mean, let's just talk about some notable people throughout the Lions roster, because frankly, apart from Des Fitzpatrick, who was just super impressive to me, I could care less about what the Steelers did. But for the Lions, just starting at the top with Hendon Hooker, he got himself about 3/4 of the game, and much like with some of his other outings, I kind of feel like he's taken a while to warm up, and I don't know whether it's a function of going against first teamers. I'm not sure whether it's he's getting spooked by a kind of leaky offensive line early, or whether it takes him a while to see the field. But there was certainly a difference between how he was processing the game. I don't just mean kind of running for his life and not having time to throw, but like it felt very much like from the maybe halfway through the second quarter, he was seeing the field so much faster than he was doing before. So when he was coming in relief of Sudfeld in the previous games, it was like chalk and cheese compared to him and Sudfeld. But when he started the games, it's taken him a while to kind of get the wheels turning, if you know what I mean.
He's not played much though. He's not played a lot of football, so it's going to be a learning curve for him. And this is the first time he actually started a game as well. Came out for the first drive. It's kind of, I guess it's kind of a bit easier when you come in halfway through a game. So there's a little less pressure on you, but you're up against what is the first team offense on the other side of the ball. You're down early. You want to get your team back into it, but there's a lot of nerves there, and you make a few rash decisions. But as you say, when you settle in, when you got a couple of drives under your belt, passes start connecting, everything starts coming together, then it looks really good. And yeah, he did start slow, but I think he's been good overall. He does have a massive problem with his running. Like they've got to sit him down and explain to him like he's got to protect himself because he's going to get hurt sooner rather. He's already been hurt once already, and he was still taking hits in this one. I really do appreciate his Man of Steel mentality and trying to get yak and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we need him to be a healthy quarterback, not a cropped one. So there are issues to work out with this game, but I think overall he's looked really good. And for me, for someone who's not that high on him, I'm quite taken aback by how little some people have thought of him in this time. I think he's been, for where he's at and how much he's played, I think he's been just fine. And I love that he's going to be quarterback two this year. Like the only way he's going to get better is seeing game reps. So, get rid of the chafe in the middle, let him be that guy. Hopefully we get some blowouts going and we can get him on the NFL field for real and start his development going. So he looked good.
He did look good, and I mean, I know that I said we talk about cuts later, but it is very associated. Uh, Jake Fromm came in relief of Hooker, and between Hooker really warming up, running well, despite not sliding as much as we'd like, passing much better, especially in the third quarter, and then Fromm coming in looking like a competent quarterback after basically a week of being in the team. Sudfeld didn't get any reps whatsoever. I think they learned all they could from him. And despite all of the chatter around the place that they like Nate and they like what he brings in terms of scout team stuff, clipboard holding, all of that sort of stuff, which is actually quite important for a backup quarterback. They decided that what they've seen from Hooker and what they've seen from Fromm is enough to say to Nate, sayonara and goodbye, because Nate has been cut.
Yeah. Yeah. You need to have, like I say, the mental side of having it is fine, but you do have to have some upside as a passer. You do have to have some upside. You have to be able to come in and at least anchor through a game or be able to win a game because that's what your job is really. And too many teams for too long, I think, have settled for guys who are just going to sit there and say do all the mental stuff, do all the clipboard stuff, fine. But there has to come a time when, especially when you're going into a window like we are firmly in a Super Bowl window now. I think your priorities change. You have to field a quarterback who can come in and win you a game and who, has done a little bit of the NFL, and whether it be from or that, they've bought him in because he has, but you've seen like the Packers have just taken Malik Willis, and I know, everything can be said about him and how he's felt in that, but at the end of the day, Malik Willis is still relatively a younger quarterback, dual threat ability, can throw, has started in this league, and if Jordan Love went down, I'm sure he'd be serviceable in replacement of him. And because the Packers are going to feel like they're in a window as well after the finish of last year. So, more teams as you get into the more, as you get into the nitty gritty of it, you've got to have a guy who can do more. And Nate Sudfeld clearly was a guy who couldn't do more than just be a serviceable guy on the sidelines to help him. So you have to make this choice, and it's the right choice for us. Because I say, any snaps that now come up, if we're in a blowout, either winning or losing, we can bring Hooker in and give him invaluable experience because Sudfeld's just not going to benefit from it now. Hooker will immensely.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I just didn't see any. I see benefit to having Sudfeld on the practice squad because I do think, in terms of scout team stuff, he can be a real asset, but there's absolutely no way I want him anywhere near a football. Just don't. I think, again, like with Blau, he'd make a good coach, and actually Carlton Wood in the chat makes a very similar point. Sudfeld seems to me to be a smart kid who has probably found his ceiling. He's has a great NFL career for an 8-year vet who's not particularly talented. But, there it is. Anyway, Nate is gone. Let's talk about the rest of the players in there. And I think it was a really impressive day from the running backs, and from a couple in particular. Jake Funk, I thought, looked really good pretty much all the way through the game. He was getting really good yards, albeit against maybe the absolute bottom of the Steelers roster. Jamar Jefferson got the ball a little bit earlier than Funk did, and was being hit in the backfield more often than not, and still managed to get 3 yards per carry and 2 touchdowns. He is still flashing that ability, which has kept him around for the last 3 seasons.
Yeah. It's a very deep room that's very competitive, and that's what these guys know. They're like, almost there's no position for you on the roster with Varkey and Reynolds there. The only way you're going to get on is by showing out in the biggest way possible, but they're not shying away from it. They're all going for it. Funk's been good. Jamar, as you say, he's lasted as a 7th round pick to last through multiple regimes, multiple running back coaches, and for you to still be around, you have to possess something. And I've said for years, he does possess something, and he's the guy you want to be able to bring in if you have an injury and you need someone to come in and pick up some slack, pick up some productivity, and he's still there. He's still grinding, and I think he could still be valuable to us yet. He probably ends up on the practice squad again, but you want your practice squad to be somewhere that's full of players who who know your system and can come in and contribute. That's what it's there for. It's practice for them, to keep them fresh, to keep them ready, and to bring them in. For too many years, we've had a rotten practice squad that's just had scrubs and throwaways and people who really shouldn't be in the team on it. But now it's very competitive all across the board. So, like, it's been very impressive how all these guys have been competing so hard. The backup running backs, even though their chances of getting on were low, the backup linebackers, despite their chances of it being low, the backup corners and safeties, despite the chances on it getting low, they've all, worked their ass off. So it should lead to a very competitive team for us, 53 and a practice squad.
There's a couple of defensive guys as well, in particular, that really made a kind of play for it. And I think three in particular. Two are still here. One has actually already announced that they've been cut. But James Houston kind of really was putting a lot of pressure on, despite being against some of the better players that Pittsburgh were putting out there. Ty Summers continued his fantastic 2 week stretch. Unfortunately for him, he has been cut, although apparently the Lions have expressed an interest to bring him back on the practice squad. And Isaac Ukwu, the edge slash Sam, who quietly has had himself just a solid camp and a good preseason without really having really big flashes. He's just been fairly consistently good. And he, along with Betts, are now the only options in that backup edge spot.
Yeah, again, he's like this edge room has been really good. We think back to Nate Lynn when he was working really hard at the start of the preseason trying to break this roster, and Agood, Betts, and Ukwu have been the same. Like there's an opportunity there potentially for them to sneak in as one of the depth spots, and they've all tried their best to get on it. Now, Ukwu's case, he's the better. I think out of the all the backups there, he's the best pure pass rusher. Like he can get to the quarterback. You saw him toss the Steelers left tackle into the quarterback like he was a lawn dart, forcing the fumble. Like he's strong. He can get to the quarterback, and that's what we need. We need more sacks this year. We don't need help against the run. We're one of the best run defenses in the league. We need more sacks. We need more guys who can come down on passing downs and get home and make some plays, get some turnovers, get some drive killers. So I think that's going to stand well for him. As for Houston, like Houston was always safe. He was always safe, and I've said this the entire summer. I don't care what anyone says. I know Dan said that, it would be a tough decision over his roster spot on that, but Brad loves him. I know Brad loves him because he said it many times himself. He singles him out as a guy on there to have. And again, I'm just going to say about Houston, he spent half a season on the practice squad in his first year. Then he came up and had his half a really good season with us, where he really balled out. He's had 42 snaps since then. That is it. He is a rookie. He is, for all intents and purposes, still a blue blood rookie with a lot to learn. And people just expect him to become a Sam. They expect him to drop into linebacker. They expect him to defend the edge really well. They expect him to pass rush really well. They expect him to do 5 or 6 disciplines to an elite level. Otherwise, nah, he's a scrub. Can't do it. And it's like, no, what he is, he's the best pure pass rusher on this team that is not named Aiden Hutchinson. And hell, even Hutch doesn't have some of the profiles. He doesn't have the elite bend that Houston has. And what he is still a green rookie who needs to learn. Is he not good against the run? Fine. But the only way he's going to get better, the only way he's going to adapt to the NFL is to play in the NFL. And everyone who's pressed the detonate button on him, it's like, well, why? You're not giving him a chance. You really are not giving him a chance to go and show what he can do going forward. At the end of the day, we need sacks. We don't need run defense. We need sacks. That's what we need. We need people who can go out there and hit the quarterback. We've got people who can defend the run. We've got people who can come and do that. You need specialists all over the field. So he showed in the last game that he showed what he's all about. Like he's devastating. He can get to the quarterback really quickly. He's got a variety of moves he can use. And he looked a little bit like the guy that we know and love. But again, every rookie needs game time to develop. Broderick's going to need game time to truly develop. Sorsdal's going to need game time to develop. And they were picked higher than Houston were. Like, all these guys, it's going to take time. But he will be just fine going forward. He showed what he can be. He will be a big asset for us this year. So, yeah, these edge guys I've been really impressed with. I would hope if we're going to, invest that quarterback 3 spot in anywhere else, either in the offensive line depth or for Ukwu, or for linebacker 6. That will be where I'll be, or for Strickland maybe at this point, but that'll be a hell of a lot better use of resources than Sudfeld.
Just had a question in from Ash, who's at work and really should be working as opposed to watching us. But, cheers for being here anyway, man. He says, the question about Houston is, does he still have that bend after the injury? And, of course, Dr. Liao of the Detroit Lions podcast has cast doubt on his ability to rush. I think it is from the left-hand side, saying that the injury is going to hamper his ability to do that, and maybe he's just a right-hand side rusher now. It's one of those things, isn't it? Because he tore it up in the 22 snaps that he had in this Pittsburgh game. And I know it's not ideal, but there are players in the NFL who, despite having no injury, are just one-sided players. And Hutchinson very much has shown the ability to rush from either side without it really affecting his play. Not that he's swapping out big to rush or whatever. Like, who cares, especially in, say, the NASCAR package. But are you seeing any sign that Houston has his pass rush ability hampered in any way since he's come back?
I mean, he looks like a guy who's not played a lot of football in a long time because he hasn't. Newsflash. He's been injured. He's not played a lot of football. This preseason, when he started, he looked rusty. Sorry, went down the wrong hole. He looked rusty. He looked like he hadn't played football in a while. He looked like a guy who's having a lot asked of him at the moment. He's not been allowed to just go out and pure pass rush. They're asking him to do a lot of different things, and to the point now where they've said, no, we're going to simplify it down. But again, does it matter if he can rush from both sides? No. If he's good enough at what he does and can get home doing what he does, then it's fine. But everyone's going, he might have lost his bend. You don't know. And this is where the thing with him is really getting to me, because I've heard people say, oh yeah, he can't stop against. There are loads of arguments appearing against him. Like, people are starting to question his attitude now, saying he's a bit of a diva, and it's like, well, hang on. People are just making shit up now. Like, James Houston has worked his ass off to get back to where he is, and he's shown himself to be nothing more than a damn hard work. I will take someone like that. If he can get to the quarterback, I don't care whether it's from one side, I don't care whether it's with one move, I don't care. If he gets there, he gets there. And he needs to be given the opportunity to go out there and show that he can be what he was. Just letting him go now is pointless. We've not given him an opportunity to reclaim his previous form. And, people said Levi was never going to play again. Doctors said Levi was never going to play again because of his injury and that. At the end of the day, it's all about the player and their willingness to come back and be able to do it. Levi's proving everybody wrong. Literally everybody in terms. We could have let Levi go, called him an injury bust, and maybe if he has a good season, we wouldn't have got that here with him. Like, let him go out and play and see what he can do first and foremost, but just don't get rid of him now, especially with no, due disrespect to the likes of a Good and Betts and that. They've never been great pass rushers in the NFL. They've never shown it that they can be before. At the end of the day, he still has the elite traits that none of them do. And again, he's very young and he's very green. He will develop into more of an all-round edge rusher and be able to do more things if he gets the snap on the field to be able to do it. So that's where I'm at with him.
Let's talk a little bit more about maybe the guys that didn't do themselves any favours when it comes to this process. And there's still quite a few of them on the roster right now. There's a few that come to mind. One, no bigger perhaps than Donovan Peoples-Jones, who had the soccer equivalent of an open goal all off-season, but decided to hit the post and then it went out for a throw-in. Do you know what I mean? Like, he continued to just throw it all away and not really look that bothered about it. I don't know what to say, because I don't know whether it's a lack of effort, but he wasn't particularly good at running the routes or catching the ball. But the most egregious point was when Isaiah Williams, a UDFA rookie, corrected where he was on alignment pre-snap. And it's okay if someone gets something wrong. You kind of expect that. Sometimes the quarterback has to direct the traffic. That's fine. But when a UDFA who's been in the system for a matter of months knows it better than you do when you've been there for a year. The death bells were ringing for him at that point, I think.
Not just him, it's Traquan Smith as well. Like these two who have bona fide NFL experience and have been good NFL players had the chance to come here and establish themselves in a Super Bowl caliber offense, which is an opportunity they are not going to get anywhere else. And they've both, if we're using football analogies, they've skied it from 2 yards out. That's what they've done. It's hit a divot forced by their own making, and they've put it straight over the bar. But they've both been terrible. But this is the thing about this team. Vets can't come here anymore. But like in previous years, Patricia probably still would have taken him because of what he's done in the NFL and because, potential he can be what he was and once all. But now that's no longer good enough. If you're losing out to these rookies know, and the undrafted free agents know that if they ball out, like if Isaiah Williams knows he balls out and DPJ doesn't, DPJ's history means nothing. He's the guy who's worked harder. He'll get his roster spot, hopefully, fingers crossed. So actually, maybe it's a good thing for us, rooting out these vets who just don't really give a damn and are just here trying to maybe hop on a bandwagon to a Super Bowl, get them out of the way, take the young guys instead. But it's been a shame. Life would have been a lot easier if they had have come good. But it's also a warning to us for guys like this that, what you see is what you get. Like a lot of people want Allen Robinson and now he's been cut out, but he's showing every indication that he's a bust. He's done. He's a bum. He doesn't care no more. But people will be like, well, maybe he could be. We don't want guys like that on our team. We want young, hungry, committed players who will play beyond themselves for this team rather than try and recover someone who has just not been good for years now. And unfortunately, it was the same with DPJ. We tried to recover someone who'd not been good for a while, but there's a reason they've not been good for a while because I don't think the attitude matched up with it. Traquan Smith's the weird one. Like, he's been good recently, so I don't know why he's gone off a cliff, but certainly this is a warning for the future. We've got to be careful.
I don't think there's anyone else on defense who was bad enough that I would say they did themselves no favors. But on defense, there were a couple of candidates potentially. Two occur to me in particular. One is actually someone who's thought to be a safe player, and I think they will be making it without trouble. But Brandon Joseph gave up an early touchdown from the safety position after taking a really terrible angle and allowing the running back to walk in from about 30 yards out. Cordarrelle Patterson touchdown, I think that was. And then Stephen Gilmore, who... It's so harsh because the run defense play was so good. I think he had 2 tackles for a loss by himself. And his ability to wrap up and tackle is elite. Like, better than the average corner, better than most corners out there. But the coverage ability that he was showing, he's a young player, he's a UDFA, he's a smaller player, but he was picked on a little bit, and it showed just a little bit too much potentially, and we thought that he'd potentially get there. He was in our 53 when we did the predictions last week, but Stephen Gilmore has also been cut, and I know he was a favourite of yours, Ant.
Yeah, I don't know. I think people have been way too harsh on him. Again, one of the big things you've got, he's got the run defending down to a T, but you could see, obviously, he's not played NFL either. He's making mistakes. He tried to jump the route the other week and didn't quite work. But that's what preseason's for. It's to hone your instincts, to know when to do things, to know when not to. And he still made some good plays, breaking up passes, good coverage. Sometimes it was just good catches that were able to do it. And there's been a couple of noticeable ones where he did bad. But overall, like his play goes back, into last season where he was making plays and, threatening to break the team. He's been good in the off season. He was making plays in training camp, in joint practices. He's done very well. So, overall, he's been good at what he's done. And yeah, there's issues to have, but he's going to be your cornerback 7. You're not going to have him out there 30, 40 snaps a game. You will put him out there in situations where you want him, especially against a run. He'd be really good to have. And, pot calling kettle, but some of his senior compartments, like Kindle Vildor, have the same issues that he do, but they're on the roster and they can't defend the run anywhere near as well as he can. So I hope he gets back to the practice squad, but I think he just needs a little bit of game time and he's going to be just fine. So it was a shame for him, but I think overall, over the whole process, over the offseason, he's done himself good. And I think someone will give him a look for sure. For Brandon, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that touchdown's all his fault. But again, he's someone who's been for a very long time now, has been knocking the door down, and he's done a lot more good and a lot more than bad during the off season. So I know it wasn't his best game the other day, but he's going to be coming in a safety four again. You're going to bring him in certain situations. You're going to work him in, and the more he plays, the better he'll get. And it's a good situation for him to be in. He's going to be in with some really good players as well. So I still believe in them both, but it wasn't the greatest individual game, no. But again, you've got to understand where they're coming from and how much they played.
Any further comment you've got about any of the players in the Steelers game in particular, or shall we move on to the cuts themselves?
I mean, I'm thinking, is there anyone else in there? I don't think so. I mean, obviously, Bates, maybe. I'm talking kicker, but I think he did just fine. Um, Anyone else? Receivers? I mean, you talk about Isaiah Williams. Isaiah Williams had him. I mean, I guess we've already gone through the receivers, but I think he really cemented himself in with I mean, he had one catch in this, but it was with returning in this one that looked really good as well. So yeah, I guess nothing else major.
I guess the thing about Williams is it's not just that he's doing one element of the returning game, he's doing both. And when Khalif Raymond is the punt returner, it means that there is a returning job available to you. So Williams may find himself day one kick returner. And kick return is a pretty bloody important job, as we're finding out in the preseason right now. In preseason week one, 70% of kicks were returned. I think it fell to 53% in week three. But, if you're going from 20 to 25% of returns happening last year up to 60% or so this year, then suddenly kick returner has gone from a nothing position to pretty damn important. And you're right, with Williams, it's not just what he did in this game, but a kind of an accumulation of what he did. He went from, I think he was the highest paid UDFA that we had. So, there was some optimism that he'd do well. He had a slow 40 time in the NFL draft process, but you watch him on tape and he's just not that guy. He's shifty, agile, got really good burst, gets up to top speed quickly, and he showed everything that he showed in college for the Lions, and that's why it looks likely now that he's going to make it.
He did what Darius Fountain didn't. He mixed together a good preseason with good games. Like he did it on the field during games because it's all great doing it during camp and that, which Fountain did as well. But when it came to the games, Isaiah Williams made plays in every single game in multiple, as you say, disciplines. So, that's the way they want these guys to run through us. And again, my disdain for RAS and stuff like that. Watch the player and you know how good they can be. And Isaiah Williams has shown he can be a good player at the next level. So, and it looks like he might have found his home here and he's beaten out best and vets to do it. And it's a fair fight. So he has fair fought out of this team potentially two guys who've been in the NFL and done it and would be wide receiver threes for us. So there's no telling that could be his ceiling.
All right, let's move on to the actual cuts themselves, because the Lions need to move down from 90 to 53. They got going yesterday in this process, and if I can count correctly, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I can't count correctly. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. There are 16 players who have either been confirmed or very strongly rumoured to have either been cut or put on a reserve of some kind, which means needing to do 37, they've done 16, and we're 51 minutes to go. There's 21 players to cut here, so there's a lot still to happen.
Yeah, and you see, and I think the positions where they haven't cut players yet are the ones where they're probably struggling most to decide. Like you've seen very little movement on the offensive line. I think it's just Brian Hudson that's gone at this moment in time. But you look at a lot of the guys who've performed well in the preseason, you think of Kingsley Aguakun, you think of Jake Burton, you think, Jacoby Jones in small periods. Like these guys have given them something to think about, and obviously they've not announced them yet. But that kind of the battles that you wanted, wide receiver, you're still just waiting to see if a few now potentially who are their safeties. Right now, Brandon Joseph, Lauren Strickland are both still there. They've both been really good, and you think that they've given them maybe a little bit of a headache. Neiman's still there right now. Are they going to take a sixth linebacker? Because that would probably be him at this point. So a lot of the cuts that have been made for so far seem to have been the chafe that we probably were going to think about that will go anyhow. Now you've got the really tough ones that you want to make. The edge room is going to be tough. What you do with Ukwu, what you do with Betts, these guys have done well and earned a shot. So it's probably tactically thinking, who can we sneak to the practice squad? Who do we need to keep? All this sort of stuff. But I think it bodes well. Like we've got critical depth in a lot of positions, and we're having to take our time, which shows the competition's been very healthy. And we'll end with a good 53. But certainly, out of all the ones that have happened so far, none. I'm not colour me shocked on any of them. So far.
Right, let's go through the list in order, in the traditional order that we always go through the roster. And we start at quarterback with Nate Sudfeld. We mentioned him already. The guy has spent the best part of 2 seasons with us now, and joins the quarterback graveyard that includes people like Brad Kaya and such illuminaries that we've had in the past, David Blau and the Laser Show himself. And Sudfeld may yet still come back to the 53. I mean, the way he played in preseason, and I can't imagine there's a massive demand for his services, especially when you have people like the Cleveland Browns have got Dorian Thompson-Robinson have made their 53, which means that they've got a Pro Bowl quarterback and a high-priced backup as quarterbacks 3 and 4, so they're both available for trade. And when that happens, it pushes people like Nate Sudfeld down the pecking order.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not surprised we got rid of Nate eventually. I know they would say otherwise, but this is easy to surmise. 2 quarterbacks, extra spot goes to someone else. Nobody's going to be so desperate for Nate Sudfeld that they're going to poach him off us. So he can be one of your 16 on your practice squad. He can still do all the stuff he does here, except he's not taking up one of those critical 53 spots instead. So it's intriguing. But like I said, you've seen with the cuts over the league and what's going on, teams are focusing on younger guys now who can give you upside going forward. Like I love DTR winning his job there. I think he's got an incredibly high ceiling if he works in the right system and he's allowed to develop and he can come in and win you games. Even as much as I hate it, Malik Willis going to the Packers, he's in a situation where he can fight it out and they could win games with Malik Willis. Don't get me wrong, they can win. And now you'll see guys like Bailey Zappi, who's out the door. He'll probably get picked up and he'll replace a vested vet somewhere because, as you know, we're probably the only team in the NFL who can say they've been absolutely, scorched by him. But he's young, he's got the ability. I think he'll replace it. I think we might see a switch now where teams go younger because it is weird how the quarterback position, especially the backup, has been neglected over years. But I think with more quarterback injuries, like half the league had injuries last year. The starters went down and we were getting, Easton Stick versus, oh God, Brett Ripien and stuff like that. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, are we watching the NFL or the CFL? And I think that's really brought home to these teams now that, you can't afford to lose an entire season because your quarterback's hurt. If you've made an investment into a Super Bowl team and you've got lots of big contracts and you quite clearly aren't going to be able to pay them next year and you're going to have to pay a price, that's no good because you're wasting multiple years. So it's interesting. But I think you'll see it more and more.
So we've got a standing question from Andrew Walker, which I'm just going to refer to every time we go through a position now because it's relevant to every single conversation we're going to have. He says, which position group are you now looking to bring in outside talent into? Any names you suggest? I'd go wide receiver. So let's not answer that question now, but let's answer that question every single position because it's a relevant question every single time. For some, maybe less so than others. Running back and linebacker probably at the highest of those. But quarterback, there was always a question about whether we keep two or three. It was always assumed that Sudfeld was going to be the third guy. You know, everyone in the media was assuming that Sudfeld was going to be there, and that was wrong. So Sudfeld is gone. The backup quarterback rule states that the person has to be on the 53. It can't be a practice squad elevation. So that rule only makes sense if you keep three on the main roster. Do you think Fromm makes it? And would you potentially think about someone like Bailey Zappi? Because if you think about what Zappi has done, if you think about what his skill set is in the NFL in terms of being a kind of short-armed, hyper-accurate, quick twitch thrower, he's not unlike Jared Goff. He's maybe just significantly smaller, but the skill set's not dissimilar.
No, and as Brad says, you have to judge every single player on an individual basis. I have no doubt that they will always continue to try and foster the competition for the quarterbacks because you can't just give QB2 to Hooker. You've got to make him work for it. You've got to make him earn it. So I, I just don't think we're going to take three quarterbacks, and I don't think someone like Bailey Zappi is going to be content sitting on a practice squad somewhere. I think it will be difficult for us. You would have to guarantee a third spot for them, I reckon. And for us, we don't need that. We need the depth this year. I mean, maybe if this was like year one of the rebuild and you were trying to foster competition and see what you got, etc., then fine. But I mean, would I like him here? Sure, he'd be great backup, like great for the practice squad, etc. But he might just find himself somewhere else. Like I feel sorry for him. Like he went from air raid to New England, which is about the furthest thing possible. Like his schematic, like he played in the same sort of system Hooker did, and he went to New England, who run the ball. They run, and they don't give you receivers to throw out. That is the toughest transition for any quarterback to have to make. So there could definitely be a quarterback to save in there. For us, I'm not so sure. Having the quarterback three thing, having them on the practice squad, I think the caliber of guy we'll be able to get will not be great. Because odds are, if injuries happen, they'll get poached pretty quick and you'll have to bring them up to protect them. And again, I don't think we can afford to do that.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And I guess the only question is, does From make it as a third? I tend to think not. But the fact that he hasn't been cut yet and Sudfeld has, I think tells a story. So let's see. I'm not sure. Let's move over to the running back position. And all the rumours are that the Lions are keeping four. They could keep five, potentially. Let's see. But it's thought that Gibbs, Montgomery, Reynolds, and Vaki are a shoo-in. We know that Zonovan Knight has been cut. And he had a very impressive preseason. He can find himself unlucky to not make it here, but given his performances, I think will catch on somewhere else. It leaves Jermar Jefferson and Jake Funk still out there. Are you surprised that they haven't been dealt with yet, one way or the other? Do you think that one of them is going to remain?
I mean, in Knight's case, I think it's a case of the team have said to him, look, you've worked really hard for us. We're going to give you the solid and let you go. He will find himself somewhere to go, Zonovan Knight will, I reckon. So I think they've done him a solid by letting him get in before everyone's caught. The market goes crazy and he can already, be talking with other teams. Now, hopefully he's got himself something set up. Funk and Jefferson have the highest level of percentage chance getting through to the practice squad and ones you want to keep around as well. So it seems to me that they probably are going to go with four. They've decided who the guys who are going to stay are, who they can sneak through. The one that they knew they probably wouldn't be able to has been allowed to discuss opportunities elsewhere. And if by some miracle he makes it through, you can always bring him back. but I would expect there to be bona fide interest in Zonovan Knight, especially like in, one of those teams who are probably looking towards the first overall pick in the draft this year, probably not got a good roster, probably tanking, etc., where he can come in and, carry a big workload at NFL level and give you something serviceable. So I'm not surprised. I think Funk and Jefferson will stay. If Knight was still here, I would still pursue the theory that they'd take Varkey as a wide receiver, or technically use him as a receiver and have four running backs other than him just to maximize how many runners we've got. Because I think that's something you can still do. Varkey's not going to see much time as a running back, right? So why keep him sort of sat there waiting behind Monty and Gibbs when you know you can use him as a receiver and you can get him on the field that way and maybe in through a few gadgets and that. So use him as a receiver if we've got issues there. Take a fourth running back, an actual one, and then just sort of have him split between. But now Knight's gone, I don't see that happening. I don't see them doing that for Jefferson or Funk.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Okay, let's move over to the wide receiver position. The Lions have been potentially the most active here in terms of dealing with people early. The first to have the blow given to them was maybe I had him on my 53, which was the wide receiver Caden Davis. I thought he was a big play machine and he'd been consistent all the way through. Someone that I wouldn't be surprised to see make our practice squad potentially. We shall see. Donovan Peoples-Jones we already have referenced, and you then talked about Doris Fountain very passingly. So that's 3 gone of the wide receivers, and it kind of only leaves people like Tom Kennedy, Maurice Alexander, and Jalon Calhoun. If they all go, that would leave Amara St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Khalif Raymond, and Isaiah Williams as the only 4 remaining. I mean, do you see any of Maurice Alexander, Jalon Calhoun, or Tom Kennedy making it, or are we just going with 4? Or
I think we'll just, I think we'll go with 4. I will go with 4, and we will explore the market for cuts, and we will look to probably bring someone in to supplement that room. Kennedy's not good enough. Alexander potentially is, but he's been messing up on his returns, which was his way onto the roster. So I'm not too sure with him. They were all guys who will get to the practice squad, I reckon. I don't think you're going to be getting people poaching for them there. So I think Isaiah Williams will get in as number 4, rightfully earned as number 4. And then we'll look to maybe bring in a guy who can play on the outside a bit more. You know, because we've got a lot of guys who play inside. So, but yeah, we'll take those 4. I think the rest will be done. Or maybe you will take like a Maurice Alexander, you'll put him on the roster as a 53, and he's the guy who gets cut tomorrow when they go and find somebody else. Because we all know this 53 will not be this 53 even within 24 hours. So, like, I think Alexander, that's the way he gets through. He's going to be like the sacrificial lamb almost. So I think when they get on the 53 and then you cut them, you can just send them straight there, can you not? So I think
Sorry, say that again. When they are...
if he makes the 53 today and then we cut him tomorrow, we can get him straight on the practice squad, can we not? Or is he still subject to waivers?
I don't know with how many games and how many rosters he's made in his career whether he would be technically a vested vet. I wouldn't be surprised if he's still subject to waivers, given that he's never really been a player in the NFL before. So, are there any players? So, wide receiver is obviously a critical need if we're only carrying 4. At least I think a lot of people are panicking about that. I kind of don't buy it. And so, we talked about this before the show started. So, let me maybe talk about it myself first and then I'll throw it over to you. It seems like a lot of people want a wide receiver 5 on this team. And whilst I wouldn't be surprised if it's something that the team prioritise, because I think having 5 is prudent, it's not giving me worry. I mean, if we didn't sign one in the next 24 hours, I kind of just wouldn't be surprised and I wouldn't be worried about it whatsoever. I mean, wide receiver 4, we were hearing from all the beat writers and everyone who does this for a living. Well, okay, yeah, fine, wide receiver 4, but wide receiver 3 is going to be the 6th option. Wide receiver 4 isn't getting really on the field in case of injury, and if they do, they're then the 6th option. So wide receiver 5 is way down there. And I mean, if you have to, We've got Brock Wright, who is a very capable tight end in line, which means you can flex out Sam Laporta to be that X receiver if you really want him to be. Now, maybe that's not putting him in the best situation for him to succeed, but in a situation specific role, for me, there's little need for a wide receiver five. I still think they'll probably end up getting one. There's going to be over 1,000 people cut today. And so there's likely going to be some people that interest the Lions. But there's lots of people flinging their hands like it's an absolute disaster, and I'm just not part of that camp. What do you think?
I'm the same. Like, we've got Amon Ra and we've got JMO, who are two legitimate bona fide receivers. We've got depth with Khalif Raymond and hopefully Isaiah Williams is coming through. But you're forgetting we've got Jahmyr Gibbs, who is a great slot receiver. You're forgetting we've got Sam Laporta, who is a 1,000-yard receiver. You're forgetting we've got James Mitchell, who, Mitchell's going to make it. He's also another receiving option. Then you're not even getting into the likes of Varkey, etc. We have lots of good options, and what we have above anything else is we have one of the best offensive coordinators in the NFL who can create opportunities for this team. You don't need three elite wide receivers like the Eagles do to be able to make things work for Hurts. Ben Johnson is able to create something out of nothing. We have a powerful ground game which keeps the box light, which means we can make mismatches in the center of the field. We've got so many playmakers in there who it's going to be trouble for. So I'm not as worried. Like I said, you've got 2,000-yard guys in there already. You've got JMO, who's going to get better this year. You've got Raymond, who I think people are sleeping on. I think Raymond took a step back last year in terms of his stats because Josh Reynolds existed. Not saying they're playing the same position, but he probably ate into his target share. Raymond's target share is going to go back up this year, and he's shown himself to be nothing but dependable. So I'm also not absolutely worried either. Literally, we've lost Josh Reynolds from the third best offense in the NFL last year in terms of yardage. That is it. Everything else returns bar him, and you're expecting JMO to pick up a lot of that slack. So again, yeah, not overly concerned as others are. I don't think it's certainly not crisis. Oh my God, we're going to be terrible territory. It's just be a minor inconvenience.
Got just a pertinent question about this position from Mike the Marine, who says, can you see Brad Holmes in trade talks with one of our tackles or edge players for a wide receiver 4/5? I can see us being in trade talks potentially, but probably for a pick. I don't think we have any talent that is going to be attractive to someone in the backup positions for a tackle or an edge. I mean, Houston maybe is more attractive nationally than he might be to the Lions coaches, but I just don't think we'd be letting Houston go, frankly. I don't know about you, Anne.
I mean, we need backup offensive tackles, let alone trading them away. We don't have backup offensive tackles right now. I hate to say it, but again, this is coming back to the whole offensive line thing. Sorsdal looks rough, which is fine, absolutely fine because of where he's at and his development. It is a long old road for a fifth-round pick to become, right up there on one of the league's best offensive lines. Then really, what do we have? We lost Connor Galvin. We lost two of the potential tackles we were going to use at left tackle this year. Which is completely sort of banjaxed us in there. We brought Jacoby Jones in, but let me tell you this right now. There is not a single backup offensive lineman who should be available for trade. Like any slight semblance of talent we have there, we need to keep. Like Awashika, you keep him. Sorsdal, you keep him. Manu, just drafted him, you keep him. Jacoby Jones, if you keep him. We need that offensive line depth, not anyone else. Screw every other team in this league. We need it because we got very lucky with offensive line injuries last year. They kept down to an absolute minimum. So I'm not even thinking about trading any of our offensive players on the line whatsoever. D edges, D tackles, no. Again, we win by trench warfare. We need to load up as much trench warfare as that's how we win games. We win it on our offensive line. We win it by brutal against run defense, and hopefully this year by taking the sack count up as well. So that's one area of this team I do not sacrifice anything for because that is the heart and soul of this team. That's how it runs. Without that, it doesn't.
Hmm. Let's move on again to the tight end position, and this is one of the best tight end rooms we've ever seen, and according to this coaching staff. And there's two players who are very much thought of as being certains, which are Sam Laporta and Brock Wright. That's not odd. The contracts tell us so. But the other four had some semblance of being out rather than being in, at least at some point during this process. Shane Zylstra has been cut, and I think a lot of people have been surprised by that. James Mitchell, Parker Hesse, and Sean McKeown are the others. Hesse's got a lot of love, and they've been cross-training him at fullback. It was thought that we might keep four. A lot of people want us to keep four tight ends, especially with no fullback on the team. But Zylstra getting cut seems to be a great sign for James Mitchell, who, like you said last week, the Lions don't have a habit of giving up on their draft picks unless they really can help it. How do you see the rest of this room shaping up as we go through the night?
I mean, like you say, it does have the potential to be very good. I mean, McKeown's got the NFL experience in there. Hesse's had a really good camp. Mitchell has been getting better. So I do believe him when he says it's going to be a good tight end room. We don't have, it's like a linebacker room, right? We don't have standout stars outside of Laporta. I mean, Laporta's a star, but outside of that, it's not flashy. But these guys all have a job to do. I think we might take four. It depends whether they think they can sneak people through to the practice squad or not. But I never had any doubts about JMO. Like, Brad's philosophy is draft and develop. Draft and develop. That develop means you've got to go through the highs and the lows with all your picks. That's why Houston's going to stay here. Houston's not had a fair chance to go. He's going to give you one your draft picks to come to Detroit knowing that their GM is going to back them every single step of the way and give them every opportunity to develop onto this roster. You know, and Mitchell is again a fifth round pick, so we seem to be applying higher standards to him for some reason. But he's had his own injury problems, but he's shown in preseason he's made some good catches. The hands have been a little bit better. I know there was one bad drop against the Steelers, but outside of that, the hands have been better. The blocking's been better. And he's another guy who is developing with time. Like day three picks take time to develop. It's just with Brad being so good with his picks, I think the day three picks are getting unfairly. There's an unfair level of expectation been set for them, and because people are already whinging about Sourcedal, people are whinging about Broderick. It's only their second years out of small schools. Give them time, and they'll get there. But it's the same with Mitchell. They were never going to give up on him. They will give him another year. They will. That's the whole crux of this team. How many of Brad's draft picks have left? There's not that many who have left. So, and there's a reason why this team is so good. It's built off its draft picks. So it's been an incredibly competitive room. JMO's probably had a big kick up the arse, been like, right, I really need to work my arse off to keep this space. And he's responding. So I think we'll take four, though. I think one of Hesse or McKeown will make it with them.
We have just had some breaking news of a cut, but that position group is coming up shortly, so we'll get there in just a moment. To finish off the offense, we turn our attention, because there's been no cuts at tackle, to the interior of the offensive line, and the UDFA versatile centre guard Brian Hudson has gone. He had a little bit of trouble with his snapping when he was under centre, and his guard play was good but not great against some players who potentially are never seeing an NFL roster. Christian Mahogany, this has not been confirmed, but it has been exceptionally strongly rumoured, and all the evidence points to this being true, that he is set to stay on the non-football illness reserve list. That means he won't be a part of the 53. It works not unlike going on IR after cutdowns. You must be out for 4 games, much like the PUP, and then you are eligible to return. And you alluded to the fact that the trenches haven't seen much activity on the offensive side of the ball in terms of cuts. And I mean, with one cut and one person moved to reserve, which we kind of knew was happening anyway, that's not a surprise. Are you surprised to see Hudson go? I don't think he was ever rumoured to really be making this team potentially. Are there any other players that you're expecting to see go shortly?
I'm not surprised he's gone because Agua Khan, Burton, and Nice have all performed really well. in the off season on the interior. And I think it was just a case of even Clemens as well. I think Clemens is still knocking around. He's looked good as well. So I think, this has just been a fierce level of competition for those interior positions. And Hudson always felt like the odd one out when it came to this. So I'm not surprised, but I'm actually quite excited to see who they do go with because again, all those four, Clemens and Guakon, Nice, Burton, have all put in a legitimate claim to go on the roster. Um, but again, like, can you take too many of them? Because again, they're not experienced. That's the whole thing with it. But I'm really excited about who they're going to pick, and whoever they do pick, I think is definitely going to have earned their way on. I'm going to feel a lot easier about the O-line than I did at the start of preseason, knowing that these guys have got in. Mahogany, it's the right thing. He's not played. He's not done any preseason. He's going to be so far behind in his development. This basically knocks him back into being a year two player potentially because of just all the off season he's missed. Like there are very few, day three players, or well, you take round five out of it, well, like round six, round seven players, especially trench guys like that, who will come in and make themselves a starter year one, missing the entirety of preseason. It just doesn't happen, unfortunately. So, um, right decision to put him on NFI, but then bring him up and then slowly work him in. But we might be well covered in the meanwhile. Certainly, some of these prospects I'm really excited about on the interior.
Yeah, across the offensive line, I wouldn't be surprised to see anyone make it. I mean, we had in our prediction Manu, Jamarco Jones, Awashika, Aguakun, and Sorsdal making it from the backups. You mentioned Nice, Clemens, Burton, and then there's Skipper as well. If any of those guys make it, apart from Duke Clemens, I wouldn't be surprised. Clemens is very much for me a candidate for the practice squad. But Nice has had himself a damn good runner. Guakun has been snapping well. Awasika is probably our best interior backup. Jake Burton's had a cracking pre-season since he's joined us. Saul's there's no chance he's going, I don't think. Manu, the way that we drafted him, there's no chance either. Jamarco Jones has pedigree. Is maybe not potentially a culture fit, but has that skill. If he can show himself that he's a reformed character in that way, could be a fantastic asset. And then everyone knows what Dan Skipper brings to this team, and that's hard to replicate. All of them deserve to be here, as you said very accurately. And it's maybe the most fascinating group of positions in the entire team as to who makes it.
Yeah, and that's why I take the extra offensive lineman because that means I can take an extra young guy with me to develop and to keep away from poaching hands from elsewhere. Because I would take Jacoby Jones. I know he's not been here long, but again, we talk about NFL experience. We need NFL experience on that line, and he's got it. And he's also got a high ceiling. People have thought a lot about him. It's just not worked. We have to be really, really careful when we talk about culture fit, and almost people will look through their record and just instantly dismiss them. Like, no, they're not a culture fit here. No, that you've got to be careful because sometimes stuff happens, right? And you're just not in the right system. You're not in the right place. And Detroit, more than anybody, has, given people second chances and they've adapted to it. So I would take him based on his experience alone. But then that means if he is in there and we can use him in relief and he can come in and be really good, we can take Burton with us, we can take Nice with us, we can take Aguakun with us and develop them in the long term because I think there's something there with them all and they've got one of the league's best offensive line coaches to teach them. And as we've been screaming about for ages, we need younger guys for the future. Our offensive line is tremendous, absolutely tremendous, but you've always got to think about the future as well. This is a year where potentially we can do something about it. Take an extra guy and get the ball rolling with them.
All right, that is the offensive cuts so far, and now we're halfway through the cuts. We're in the midst of our biggest live audience for a long time, maybe since the end of last season now. And if you are new to the show, if you haven't watched us before, thank you for coming to watch us. We don't take taking your time out to listen to some Brits talk about Detroit lightly. So thank you, first of all. We are live throughout the season twice a week doing preview and review shows. We make a habit of championing other people like ourselves who are super passionate, many of whom that we've had on our show over many years. Lots of them are from the UK themselves, and you can really see that passion bleed through. So we should be having someone like that every week. We've also fostered some great relationships with people like us from your side of the pond as well, especially the Lions beat writers who have been nothing but absolutely fantastic to us in the 4 years that we've been doing this. So if you're here for the first time, please do consider subscribing to the channel just to, well, help boost our numbers to begin with, because that doesn't cost you guys anything. But hopefully come along and see a couple more shows and see what you think of us, because it would mean the absolute world to us. It's a real labour of love. The other thing that we do, which I think is unique, apart from one other podcast on this side of the pond, but actually, generally speaking, I don't think there's a podcast of better quality than on this existing feed, our college football show. If you're interested in college, if you're interested in the NFL draft, and alongside me, along with Ryan McCluskey, does maybe the most thorough and comprehensive college football podcast in the market. So that happens once a week. They recap football all the way through. They do some really good all-star stuff in the run-up to the draft. You won't find better takes. I mean, when it came to day 3 predictions a couple of years ago, they nailed every single one, which is insane going down that far into the draft. But if you have a look at some of the players that have really succeeded across the league, our hit rate has been fantastic. So do consider listening to that as well. And we also have a Discord channel. It's where we hang out all the way through the week, but there's some really cool and friendly Lions fans on our community, and I'm very proud of the fact that, you know, Twitter can sometimes be very toxic. Reddit too can also be similarly toxic at times. Our community is a very kind of uplifting one, and I'd be very grateful and happy to see you guys join us there too. If you've ever got any questions for us, if you want to see any content custom for you, we're always very open on our Twitter to take suggestions or just to chat with you guys. So please do come and say hello. Ant runs our Twitter account. I'll masquerade on there every now and again. And also through the games actually does a tweet stream of what's been going on. The reactions are absolutely hilarious. And myself and another one of our guys, Ash, we tend to do a kind of alternative commentary play-by-play reaction. There's lots of great content which is going to be coming through this season, so anything you guys can do is much, much appreciated. Let's move on to the defense. And our only interior defensive line cut, although he's listed as a DE, let's see it says defensive lineman, is the former Lions 7th round pick, Pat O'Connor. It is reported by the media that the Lions want to sign him to the practice squad, and he came late in the process, but I think he didn't look out of place. He's did very well, I think, at Tampa Bay as a kind of core special teamer. And, you know, when you do get an injury to a core special teamer, sometimes it can be hard to replace that with someone who potentially has more ability as a player on offense or defense. And he's shown some ability in this league and then didn't look out of place necessarily in our preseason games. He just wasn't here that long.
I mean, cutting Bob Quinn draft picks is fun. Like, let's just keep doing it again and again and again and again and again just to show him how bad he sucked at it. But yeah, I did. There was just no play. I think he came too late in the process. Again, he is trouble. The DTs with Levi doing so well, you know, that room is kind of full at this point. And then the DNs, you just happen, you know, you unfortunately happen to have had the likes of Betts and Good and Ukwu and that providing really stern competition for the 53. So I think it's just, he's like Ty Summers, like not really had the chance to put his marker on things. Like you say, if he gets through to the practice squad, maybe something can happen with him, but he's just one of those examples, I think, of a little, too late. Not diminishing the work that he's done, but we can get younger at those positions now. Again, you do want a younger edge rusher, really, with Davenport in there. You know, you just keep sort of, going at it. So it's a shame, but there are guys who've worked a lot harder all off season for those spots. So he was always going to struggle.
When I said about custom content, we've had someone asking for feet pics. You should check our OnlyFans. Uh,
Yeah, that's where the feet pics go.
oh man, yeah.
The,
Link
the
in
shi
profile.
the shiny bald head pics. I grease my head up and make it nice and shiny. Yeah, I get some. That is really popular for some reason. Some right weirdos out there.
Let's move on to the exterior of the defensive line. The edge players that have gone. Mitchell Agude was cut earlier on in the process. I really thought he was going to make it as just a solid all-around edge player, but he has not. And then in the last few minutes, we found out that the CFL sack leader for last year, Matthew Betts, has also been cut. And we did think that it would be 1 out of 3 to make it, with Isaac Ukwu being the other. Who was your favourite? And Ukwu still remains. Are you surprised that... Well, I mean, it's not confirmed that Ukwu is here still yet, but it looks pretty good for him. Are you surprised that Betts and Agude have gone? Because I know you see it one way, but maybe the Lions see it another. Are you confident that that means Ukwu's going to be here now? And anything else you think about the position group generally?
I'm just a bald idiot on the internet. What I think does not matter compared to what NFL teams think. But for me, I'm not surprised with Betts. Betts was out of those three, out of Ukwu, out of Betts, out of Agude. Betts was 3 out of them. So Agude's done better and he's more versatile. Ukwu's shown himself to be a better pass rusher. So, Betts has lost that. I'm not surprised Betts has gone because the other two have shown things better than he has. Agood, maybe I'm a little. In fact, no, no, I'm not surprised because Agood was gunning for James Houston's job, and I never had any doubt that James Houston was going to lose his job because of, again, whole rant from earlier, which I'm not going to bore people with. Again, I mean, potentially outside of that, Ukwu, like I said, best pass rusher potentially out of, and again, our run defense is not an issue. Now, obviously, it needs to stay high and stay good, but our issue is getting to the quarterback. So I think it prudent that we keep the more specialist pass rushers with us this year to give us some more sacks from across the board. So, we've got a really solid interior. I think we're going to be really good against the run again. We're going to get a lot of 3rd and long situations where we can send some of these specialists to wreak havoc and to show a load of different looks as well. So, me personally, for the football I like, I this is what I would have expected. But again, I'm just some randomer on the internet. That is how I do it. The Lions don't see it the same, but I hope Ukwu makes it. I hope Houston makes it. You've got a couple of guys there who can get after the QB, and then you've got Davenport, Pascal, Hutch, the bigger guys to come in and do all the stuff against the run. You've got some secret weapons to throw out there after that. I think it's a good mix. I feel like it's a really good mix we've got, providing everyone can stay healthy.
Moving to the linebacker position, covering both inside and outside linebackers. Ty Summers has been cut. We alluded to that earlier. And Abraham Beauplan. It has been said again that the Lions would like to sign him to the practice squad should he make it there. They were 2 players, Ant, who really played well this preseason and showed themselves to be very capable NFL players. I think they can consider themselves unlucky they were maybe in the deepest linebacker group in the entire league. And it leaves a room that still has Ben Neiman and Joel Igwenbuike, I can't say that name, on the team alongside the presumed 5 that are definitely making it. Do you see us keeping 6, and why is it Ben Neiman?
Because Ben Neiman has a lot of NFL experience, not just as a starter, but as a special teamer. And he's been here longer as well. Again, this is, the linebackers were always on a hide into nothing. We've needed guys for camp because, again, our starting 5 really, I know Rodrigo probably would have played a bit more if he'd not been dealing with a little injury, but we've not seen Reeves Mabin at all, I don't think. I feel like we've not seen Reeves Mabin at all. He's linebacker 4, technically, in this whole thing. Malcolm would be 5. We didn't really see much, even in the first game when it was healthy. This is just a case of the room's already full, but, come in and by all means make a name for yourself and you'll get a shot with us or elsewhere. Like Neiman, Beauplan, Summers. I've just been incredibly impressed with the linebackers all throughout this process. They have, again, in the face of not seeming to have an immediate opportunity here, they've not let it get to them. They've just gone, right, well, I'll put good tape out there and maybe someone will take notice of me if nothing happens here. But like Beauplan, great in 2 weeks. Summers been great. Neiman been great. But for me, yeah, when you get into your linebacker six, if you can have a guy like Ben Neiman, who is already experienced in the NFL, can come in and provide the role of what maybe JRM and Malcolm do if someone gets hurt, you've got a six deep linebacker room, a position where you're going to have wear and tear. Like, that's big for us because we've not always had the depth at linebacker in the past. Like, not the genuine depth. We've had starters, but we've had to bring in, like the likes of the Anthony Pittmans of the world and stuff like that in to take reps. And that's where things have really fallen for us. So I think it's a position they will want to take a ton of talent into. And I would trust Kelvin Shepherd with a ton of talent to develop it even greater. So I hope to see them all back, quite frankly. Apart from Joel, he's not been here really. So sorry, you're down at linebacker 10 at this point, mate. So not much we can do for you.
Absolutely back you up on Ben Neiman. I am so impressed with what he's done to the point where he didn't even play in game 3 of the preseason because he'd shown enough for me to wrap up his spot, or that they didn't feel like they were going to learn anything new from him taking reps, and he was either going to make it or not at that point, and he'd done enough. So still think he can be cut, but it was clear that he put enough on tape for the team to not have to play. And many thanks to Pride of Detroit for subscribing at Tier 1 on Twitch. Their 26th month. Jeremy, I suspect, says, been a while since I stopped by. Hope you chaps as well. We're doing very, very well. And since you're here, congratulations on getting your podcast back, guys. It's maybe the biggest victory of the off-season for any of the Lions guys. And I know that it's had to change slightly to accommodate the powers that be upstairs, but having you guys back in the fold is brilliant for the entire season. So well done, and looking forward to lots of great stuff through the season. Let's move to the DBs and then special teamers afterwards. So corners, Stephen Gilmore, I mentioned earlier. Rashad Wildgoose, the name bracket man, has not made it. They're both cut, unfortunately. And Emmanuel Mosley, it's not been confirmed yet, but highly suspected he's going to be put on injured reserve with the designation to return. So there was this new rule put in this off-season whereby you can set people to IR before the roster cutdowns, but on the same day as the roster cutdowns, i.e. right now. And they become maximum of 2. They become 2 of your 8 players that you can return from injured reserve in the season. They have to be out a minimum of 4 weeks, much like being on the PUP or the NFI or anything like that. So it's suspected he's going to do that. And still, for the life of me, I don't know what his prognosis is, because we know it's a pectoral issue. It could be a strain, it could be a partial tear, and it could be a tear. And if it's a strain, it could be 6 weeks. If it's a partial tear, it could be something like 3 months. And if it's a full tear, it could be 5 to 6 months. And if it's 6 weeks, IR to return makes all the sense in the world. If it's a partial tear, you're coming back around Thanksgiving, which is not ideal, but at least you've got some runway to come back and get into form before the postseason starts, should we get there, God willing. If it's a full tear, you're maybe coming back around the championship game having not played for 3 years, in which case, what's the point? So, the prognosis really matters for Mosley, and with the rest of the room, we've still got Javelin Guidry and Isang Bassi, who have not been cut as yet. Lauren Strickland as a nickelback is still around, alongside the presumed people who were making it in Terrion Arnold, Ennis Rakestraw, Carlton Davis. And then you've got Khalil Dorsey and Kindle Vildor, who are rumoured to be making it, but we don't know as yet. What do you think about this cornerback group? There's a lot of names to talk about here.
We're not going to see any surprises now. I think Gilmore had the best chance of breaking in, and he's gone. None of the others are going to get close. So assuming Vildor and that are sort of in the lower echelons of it. I'm not including Strickland. I'm including Strickland as a safety for purposes here. So I'll talk about him in a minute. I expect the room to be as is probably advertised, with the main 6. And then, I don't see any shocks here from this point in. I think Gilmore was the only guy there. With Mosley, you're right. This is where like this is where Dan and Brad's loyalty to their players like really shows through. And you know what? I admire the way they do it, even if I think it's wrong. Like their loyalty to their players is unwavering, and that's what's created the bond that this team has, and you know the trust that all these players repay into them to play so well. He's not started a game since the 9th of October 2022. Let's just say, let's go in the middle of your prognosis, let's say 3 months before he's healthy to even start training again. We're going to lose him till what? I mean, say week 10, 11. You're talking October, November. You're talking over 2 calendar years since he's taken a snap, really. You know, we're not going to count the 2 that he had last year. Every time he tries to get better, his body breaks down. Like, 2 snaps and his body broke down last year. A bit of training camp this year, his body breaks down again. I think there comes a point where you just have to say it's not working. Like 3 major injuries in a row, not many players come back from that. So for me, I kind of just wouldn't use the designation on him. I think Mosley, for me, he needs to go to Canada, go to the UFL, get a full season behind him, get himself fit and ready again, and then get himself back in the NFL and show that he can do it. Having said that, I understand why they bought him here for a purpose. They believe in the player, and this is where, again, I admire their loyalty to him. Like many other teams would have just called it quits by now. Brad and Dan don't do that. So you've just got to pray that it's on the lighter side, that he can come back a bit sooner. And then, because at the end of the day, I don't want him coming back and then inserting him into high pressure situations right away. That's what we've got Dorsey and Vildor for, right? To come in relief, to give us some snaps we might need in situations, etc. And I just don't, I just don't want to put him in there after so long and hope, because he's not going to be the same player when he got hurt. So for his sake, I'd rather he go away, play some football, and then come back next year and then do it. But we will see with him. But as for the corner room itself, I don't envisage any shocks going forward unless we trade for somebody like you've seen the likes of CJ Henderson and Caleb Farley released today. Maybe, or, maybe we have a go at them, whatever. I don't know, but certainly not on our roster.
As we speak, there is 3 minutes to go until the deadline, and the Lions are 20 players over the limit. Now, last year, they did wait about an hour to an hour and a half after the deadline before officially confirming their 53-man roster. So we are anticipating some of this news coming quite late after we summarise these guys here, even after the deadline expires, because it would have happened, but we just don't know it yet. So we're going to talk about the one remaining cut, and then we are, as it stands, and then we are going to wrap up the audio show and then just hang out with our YouTube and Twitch live audience for the remainder of the evening as we await the news. So the last one we have to cover, Ant, because there are no safeties cut as yet, is the special teamers. And as it stands, we only had one punter and we only had one kicker. And for the moment, they've both survived, which potentially is not the most shocking news in the world. But the other battle that we did have was at the long snapper position. Now, we had the incumbent Scott Daly against the UDFA challenger Hogan Hatton. And don't say that watching kicks really closely doesn't pay off, because this show was potentially the only one that is Lions focused whatsoever that picked Hogan Hatton to win the job over the incumbent Scott Daly, and that has come true, with Scott Daly being cut and Hogan Hatton winning the job. And you seem to be pointing in some direction. Should I take a victory lap now?
This is you. All right, this is you. You predicted Hogan Hatton was going to make this roster because you are the long snap specialist. Long snap is LSU. What LSU means, it means Long Snappers Union, and this man is the commissioner of it, and he called it right. So when we joke with him about this long snapper stuff, we're not joking. He knows what he's on about. So he's doing his victory lap, and rightly so. And I believe he was doing a merry chant earlier when he heard Scott Daly was done. Like he's He's been a vehement critic of Scott Daly. He's over. He's done. Now Hogan Hatton's going to be under the lens, but no, no decision made on this roster was celebrated more widely by some members of this panel. And fun fact, because Ash said if it happened, he was going to buy the jersey. Ash has bought a Hogan Hatton jersey. So we are going to be the only Detroit Lions podcast on the internet that can proudly say that they have a Hogan Hatton jersey getting represented on the show. So this is a big deal for us. This is LSU. We are LSU.
Yeah, we know where our niche is.
Your niche.
Yeah, right. So just to go into it a little bit, Scott Daly is a good snapper. It's not that he hasn't been a good snapper in his career. But it's a little bit wayward. And actually, I don't think that scouting this is particularly tough. So when you have a look at what happens, I mean, obviously long snapping is a big feature of punts. And if that goes badly, you kind of see that very obviously. But for place kicks, for field goals and for extra points, you want your holder to basically not have to move whatsoever from putting his hands up to putting the ball down. You just want that to be a very swift motion, and you want the snap to go directly into his hands. What you saw with Scott Daly was nothing really inaccurate, but his hands would often move towards his head. He'd have to be reaching up a little bit to then put the ball down. And when you need to get the kick off quickly because you're being pursued, you are making things tougher for yourself. The other thing that you have with a long snapper is the ability to take a team by surprise because the snap is directly to Jack Fox. And I'm going to say this now as a spoiler for our show in a week's time. My bold prediction will be that Jack Fox has a passing touchdown from a fake field goal or a 2-point conversion from an extra point because he's a good thrower of the ball, as we know. If you don't have a snap be that accurate and you lose a quarter of a second or half a second because you've got to reset, it makes it tough. And the other thing that a snapper does is where the snapper is making issues, they make the holder look bad and they make the kicker look bad. So when people have been saying that Jake Bates has missed some easier kicks, the hold has been bad. When you look at the hold, Jake Bates actually likes a kind of 20 to 30 degree angle on the ball when it's being held. So if it's not being held straight up, as we've been used to as Lions fans for the last decade or so, most of our kickers have liked it pretty much straight up. Bates doesn't. So when you see it being held not straight, that's how Bates kicks the ball, presumably because that's how he likes it. So Fox is having to adjust to that. But often Fox has not been given very much time to actually align the ball how Bates likes because Daly has been slightly inaccurate with his snaps. And the difference is minor. You know, you're talking about getting the ball here and getting the ball here. It's a matter of maybe, 10 inches? Maybe slightly less. It's not a massive difference. But the Lions are perfectionists. We're used to really good long snapper play. And frankly, Hogan Hatton has been more accurate through this preseason, and they wouldn't have brought Hatton in if they didn't have some concern that Daly wasn't the guy. So the fact that Hatton was brought in was not a good sign for Daly, and then the Hatton being better than him through the process was not a good sign for Daly. So this doesn't surprise me at all. It's a position which is boring to scout, potentially, but the kicks happen, and there's nothing else to watch. So at the same time, what are you going to do? Like, it's not that hard to watch. But anyway, that's my breakdown on special teams. The thing about it is, it's not that interesting for some people until you miss the extra point or a field goal and it costs you a game. And then you have to diagnose exactly what happened with that play. So understanding it from a fundamental level is actually quite interesting to me. It costs games or wins games. It's the difference.
Just got Grandizer in my head now. Come for the long snapper talk, stay for the accents.
We have Jeremy saying it's been far too long since we've seen Jack Fox throw the ball. Just on this briefly before we go back into cut down day, as the deadline has now passed during my rant, was it refreshing to you last year to see the Lions do less trick plays last year because the Lions were a better team? Or do you think there's a little bit of room for the Lions to introduce a bit more trickery back into the team? Because I think we introduced the fear into teams in previous seasons that we maybe had it play on their mind without doing it too much last year. I don't remember a huge amount of fake punts compared to previous seasons. I know we did it a little bit, but do you think there's a bit more room for some trickery this year?
I think teams were expecting it from us last year. A good team keeps the opposition guessing. Like we did a lot of the trick plays and that helped lighten the box against us. But last year we were able to run the ball incredibly well. So I think when you run the ball incredibly well, you don't really have to do the trick plays as much. Um, like I remember a lot of the trick plays we did, like when we did, was it a trick play to JMO against Tampa? When we busted them big open with him, like, we were struggling to break them down that day. They were just basically an iron wall. So sometimes you have to bring out the fireworks to do so. But we were the third best offense in terms of yardage last year. We had no trouble getting yardage. And I think, you know, that's why being so aggressive early in Campbell's tenure paid off because other DCs started to panic, which opened the game up for us to go back to our bread and butter. Now, on the flip side, teams might try and revert back to us this year and go, right, they're gonna ground and pound us. They're gonna try the old-fashioned way. We reintroduce the trick plays in again. Keep them guessing, keep it fresh, and that's what Ben Johnson does best. So I would expect to see a little more trickery this year. And plus now, the one big thing we've got is we've got Hendon Hooker. So that immediately opens the door for us to do somewhere like I would love to see, kind of what the Saints did with Taysom, where they bring him in, but the quarterback was in as well. You can start doing some trickeration with Hooker on the field, and teams aren't going to know what's coming. So I do expect to see us get a little bit funky again next year. As I say, keep everybody guessing, keep it all fresh.
The deadline, as I say, has now passed. There is no news as yet from the Lions. We are hanging on for that. It could be that it takes another 60, 90 minutes, even longer than that. We're going to be on as long as we can bear, but we've come to the end of the cuts as they stand, and we've gone through the roster in terms of some thoughts about the position by position. So I'm going to wrap up the audio show here, otherwise it could be a lot of banal and inane conversation and filler for a long time. So we're going to bring this to a close now. If you're on the audio show, thank you very much for listening. Our next show is the College Football Podcast, and remind us again what you're talking about for college this week.
It's a review of week 0, and then we'll be looking ahead to the first full week of college football. But I get to celebrate a Florida State defeat already, so I'm looking forward to it.
Poor Ash. We have, after today's episode, we are reverting to a 2 episodes a week formula and live shows during every single game this season, if I can damn well help it. So 3 shows a week from here on out on the main show, and we start next Monday with the season prediction show. I don't know who the reigning champion is. It's me. I'm the reigning champion. But we have to do our predictions for this season, and so we are going to go through game by game, giving our predictions of win-loss record and point differential for every single game for all of the Royal Alliance guys, and we are going to award points all the way through the season. And as always, the loser of the entire process has to buy a round at the next Royal Alliance meetup. So it's a costly way to lose. So we'll be going through that on Monday. And then later on in the week, a day to be decided, because I think our counterparts from the Rams are not available on our usual Thursday, so we might have to move. But I hope to get our friends over at LA Rams UK to come on and preview Game 1 of the NFL season, which, unless I'm tricking myself, is it Sunday Night Football? First game?
Yeah.
Sunday Night Football at home against the Rams. So you'll have to check that out before. We will be live doing our alternative commentary, and Ant will be on with the tweet stream for Rams at Lions. Not next week, is it? Week after, that is. I'm ahead of myself, and I don't know what I'm talking about. We have lots of shows coming up, and it's going to be really exciting. So anyway, ignore me on that. Right. Our socials, please do follow us on all of those. So I've already mentioned the Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch, but we're also on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Find us at Roar the Lions UK, and on the Facebook group for Worldwide Fans, Detroit Lions Fans UK, One Pride Worldwide. Ash does a great job with the preview articles on the website, which is rotluk.com. You can find us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Just remains to me thank you for going through all the cuts so far with me. And guys, in the audio show, we will see you later on this week. But for now, let's go Lions. One Pride.
One Pride.
Recording stopped.
And apologies for absolutely butchering that. Right, people in the chat, Twitter, Twitch. Yes, Jeremy has alluded to the fact that Sunday Night Football is a 1:30 a.m. start for us. Yes, and I have just had my holiday request, my annual leave request, rejected for Monday. So I'm going into work after that. It will be bedtime at 5 a.m. and then I will be in work for 9:30. So I am going to feel like a bunch of daisies on that Monday. It's going to be great.
We're made of tough stuff. Like, again, I've got to have at least an hour and a half of ribbing the opposition when we beat them on Twitter afterwards. So I can't go to bed right away. You got to strike while the content's hot. So I will go to sleep at about 6 a.m. So this is what we do. This is what we did this during Matt Patricia. If we can do it during Matt Patricia, we can sure as hell do it for a team that's going to the Super Bowl. We are made of tough stuff. Otherwise, we'd have all just stayed soccer fans and done it normally over here. You can't take over an undertaking like this without being dedicated.
Big Aries says he's going to send us some high caffeine coffee. I mean, I'm going to be absolutely
Oh yeah, go for it.
Do that.
Go
Get
for
us
it.
the Dan Campbell special.
Yeah, I've got half a bottle of Patron tequila coffee, the coffee tequila stuff that'll keep me going. That shot of that right as a daisy all night would be good. So
I got a question that I answered in the live chat from Marcus, but he's asking you as well. So Marcus asked us both, is American football or soccer our favourite sport at this time? So I answered fairly emphatically for American football, despite my love of Liverpool FC. American football is life right now.
I love soccer over here. I support a very small team. It's a local. That's why I like the Lions so much. I support a local community team. Very close knit, in it for the love of the game, not for the wins. I love soccer, but American football has given me a new edge. I love it because of how tactical it is, because, and especially down at the collegiate level, I love the collegiate level stuff because it's so much fairer. In this country, young players are snapped up by big teams, kept on practice squads for years, and you sometimes never see them develop. There's just no fairness to the systems over here, and it becomes very boring because, like a team like mine, we're capped on how good we can be. I'm just going to watch the same games against the same team every single year because we can't be anything better than that because of how the money dictates it. American football's very, very tactical. And coming through college, watching the players doing the scouting gives me a great deal of joy because I find that it's a challenge. Doing college scouting and stuff like that is a challenge. Trying to work out who's going to be good, who's not going to be so good, all the schemes, all the different things. But it's just so vast and varied. But at the end of the day, it's so fair as well. So it's great. The atmospheres are tremendous. So I must admit, I never thought I would. I thought there was a time American football was just a bit of a joke because I'd sit and watch it here and there'd be too many commercials, it's too long, etc. But the more I've sat down and appreciated it, it probably is one of my favorite sports now because I have a vested interest in it, especially now we do the podcast as well. And because people tune in and listen to us, like I do feel I have a duty to it as well. So yeah, American football is, I would say, my favorite now. It's a long-winded answer, I'm sorry.
No, but it's important. and people, I think because we're Brits, we do need to justify ourselves. We haven't grown up with the sport necessarily, and it's hard to take people seriously with this accent, talk about a sport which is entirely located in the confines of one country that isn't our own. So, some justification is justified, I think. Some news coming out of Green Bay Packers land. AJ Dillon has been placed on injured reserve and is not designated to return. His season is done. Tyler Davis has been placed on IR. His season is done, but the defensive lineman Jonathan Ford is designated to return. Shocker for AJ Dillon that they've left it this late only to make sure that he's done for the year. We've been asked a lot about the wide receiver position, and there's been an article which has been released by the Detroit News, and I'm going to link it in YouTube and Twitch right now. Please go and read the article. I mean, we are the online equivalents of Dov Kleinman in some fashion, because we do aggregate some news. That is how we have to do it, because we're not physically located in the United States. We do obviously give some analysis on things, and we do try and give our absolute credit to the writers of the pieces. So when we talk about this stuff, whether it's from Friday Detroit or Lions Wire or Detroit News or whatever, please go and read the actual articles, because they contain a lot more context than what we talk about. With that said, this piece by Richard Silver of the Detroit News talks about the 10 best available ex-receivers for the Lions to consider. So these are all people who were available before today or have just been cut. And I just want to get your snap reaction to these players. Let me list them off, all 10, and let's just hear what you think about some of them, or maybe we'll go back through them, but I'll just list the 10. So Noah Brown of the Texans, Tim Patrick of the Broncos, formerly of, Isaiah Hodgkins, formerly of the Giants, Allen Robinson, formerly of the Giants, Terrace Marshall, formerly of the Panthers, Russell Gage, formerly of the Ravens, John Giles, formerly of the Giants, Martavis Bryant, formerly of the Commanders, Hakeem Butler, formerly of the Bengals, and Equanimous St. Brown, formerly of the Saints. So there are those 10. Are there any names that stick out to you, or do you want me to go through them one by one and we can talk about them individually, because we've got a bit of time to burn?
All I can say is I didn't hear the name Joshua Cephas, so none of them count. Yeah. For those who don't know and you don't watch the college pod, Joshua Cephas was my big crush coming up this year. The Jags took him as a UDFA, but they've released him now. We need an outside receiver. We need an outside receiver who can block really well. We need a guy who has the potential to be a really good receiver in the NFL, and he fits every single category there. So I would hope he probably won't be, because again, but right now, Joshua Cephas is my outstanding candidate to make this roster. He's the one I want more than anybody. I gave him as much love as I did Puka Nacua the year before everyone started talking about him. I do believe genuinely the guy is going to be special. So he would be the one I'd take right now. But there are some good options out there. We say no Browns on back-to-back 500-yard seasons. Tim Patrick, I'm a bit. I mean, it's great, but he's coming off 2 serious injuries. So again, I'm sorry, I'm traumatized by long-term injured. Been a Lions fan. It's just something that always puts me off a little bit. But yeah, there's some intriguing options to be had if we do want to take a guy out of these. Just hopefully enough of them are not waiver wired, because a lot of them wouldn't reach us if they were.
McSperiment in Twitch also mentions one of the other players you mentioned in the draft process who has also been waived and is not on this list, who was never really thought of. Maybe he would have been a round 7 guy, but otherwise he was a priority UDFA. The wide receiver out of Georgia, Rosemary Jack Saint as well. Rosemy Jack Saint. Sorry.
Rossamy.
Thank you.
Rossamy Jack Saint. Jeremy.
Yes, so you were a fan of his as well, somewhat.
Yeah, he had a really good Senior Bowl. Either Senior or Shrine Bowl. I can't remember. He had a good off-season process. It was all right during the season, but like his counterpart, Lab McConkey, the receivers don't always get the opportunity to shine in Georgia a lot of the time. So, especially with Brock Bowers around. Would I take him here? I don't know. He was never as much on my radar as others. So I like literally, you can't look over everybody coming up there. Hence why I still talk about Cephas with refound optimism because I looked at him a lot, but possibly. But all I know is there's a lot of wide receiver talent out there. Like this is a good year to need a receiver coming out of roster cuts, because there's a lot of people released.
So I think of the people in this list, the person that I think has the highest ceiling.
Oh, Justin Rogers has just released it. There's a lot of people. Hang on. The Detroit Lions release Isang Bassi, Fountain, Guidry, Igbuniwe, Jamarco Jones, Tom Kennedy, Sean McKeown, CJ Moore, Pat O'Connor, Kyle Pico, DPJ, Nate Sudfeld, and Ty Summers.
And then David Badder is waived. Broderick Martin and Emmanuel Mosley has gone on IR. And Christian Mahogany on reserve non-football illness list. So Mosley and Mahogany confirmed. Broderick didn't look great after that little knock he took in the preseason game. What Broderick Martin going on IR means is either his season is done, or it means that Kaminsky's season is done, unless Mosley has been placed on a injured reserve that means he can't return. So we don't know about what IR means at this point.
No. I don't think Broderick's is serious. He got rolled up on, but he's a big man, so it takes a while to recover from it. So, hang on. So yeah, there's a lot. So Bassi wasn't announced before. Guidry wasn't announced before. Joel wasn't. Jamarco Jones wasn't. McKeown wasn't. That means I don't see Hesse on there. So Hesse's made it potentially. Well, Hesse's still there.
Right, so
I'm trying to figure these out.
Yeah, sorry, we're getting the news through at the moment. I don't think there's any. So designated for return, Broderick Martin and Emmanuel Mosley. So they are the two that are able to return, which means that John Kaminsky hasn't. John Kaminsky is still on the team. He has made the 53-man roster. He's probably going to go to IR in about 24 hours' time, and then he'll be able to return as well. So that's the way round they've done it, for whatever reason. Waived injured is David Badder. So Badder, as far as I can recall, not Badder, I'm thinking of Pico. So is Pico gone?
Pico's released. Pico's released.
So Pico and Badder and Chris Smith, who is also gone, were the backups at defensive tackle in the nose tackle position. With Broderick Martin done and Reader not having taken a snap in preseason, Ant, we do not have a 0 or 1 technique who's played in preseason at all left. We have none. So
no, we don't.
That's an interesting move. I do think with Onzarike bulking up to about 320 pounds that he can fill in there in a pinch, but that's definitely not his best spot.
Levi played nose most of his college career.
But it's not his best spot, though. We acknowledged when we were doing the tape review that it hampered him.
Yeah, but we'll play with a 4-man front, so you don't have a traditional nose. Well, you don't need one. You don't need a nose tackle. So I would assume, because Aleem played nose as well. So, I would assume you'll just get people rotating in and out of there. Like, Aleem is technically a nose tackle. They've moved him out a little bit, but he can play on the interior as and when he's needed to. So it leaves us short, that's for sure. So maybe we'll pick up a DT coming up to, alleviate that in the meanwhile. But it shows they've got supreme confidence in Levi.
It does. Right, let's go through this position by position because I think it just analyzes it a bit more easily. Quarterback, Jake Fromm has survived. Jake Fromm has not survived. He's waived. He's waived. Sorry.
Jamar Jefferson's not on this list. Jamar Jefferson's still on the roster.
No. Jamar Jefferson's been waived.
Damn it.
Right. Let's go through this a bit more thoroughly. I will.
Damn it.
Quarterbacks, only 2. Jared Goff, Hendon Hooker, Jake Fromm is gone. Surprised?
No. Jesus, all our O-line's gone.
Yeah, it is. So Jamar Jefferson has gone. Zonovan Knight, we already knew. Jake Funk is also gone. All of the other running backs have made it, so we're going with 4 in Gibbs, Monty, Reynolds, and Vaki, as expected, and
Yeah, no surprises there. You'll see most of them back on the practice squad.
in terms of wide receivers, Jalon Calhoun, Maurice Alexander have both gone, and Tom Kennedy has also been released. So those 3 that we were talking about have gone. Isaiah Williams has survived. He is wide receiver 4, and we only carry 4 as it stands. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Khalif Raymond, Isaiah Williams. When it comes to the offensive line, this is going to be interesting to go through. Left tackle, Jamarco Jones has gone. That leaves Decker and Giovanni Manu. I do not see him on this list, so Manu has made it, which is expected. When it comes to right tackle, Penei Sewell and Colby Sewell was there. I also do not see Dan Skipper on this list, which means that Dan Skipper, it looks like, has also made it onto the 53. The 6th man is still there. When it comes to the interior of the offensive line, Glasgow, Ragnow, and Zeitler are, of course, there.
Awashika
is still here. I do not see Aguakun on this list, do I?
Aguakun's waived.
Aguakun's waived. So there is no backup centre.
Waived. Nice is not on the list. Nice has made it.
And he was the second team centre for a long period of camp.
So Michael Nice has made it, but that leaves us really short.
Jake Burton hasn't made it as well. So we've got Decker and Manu, Glasgow, Awasika, and Nice. That's 5. Ragnow is 6. Zeitler is 7. Sewell and Sawstall and Skipper is 10.
Oh, we have kept 10 then.
10 offensive linemen, but Skipper can't play as any of the 5, really.
No.
We only have Awashika as interior depth. That's it.
And Manu's not ready to be depth
not ready. So we only have Sawstall and Awashika ready to step into the team, potentially.
We need a tackle.
Well, so Skipper can play guard better than he can tackle, so maybe that's your other interior guy, potentially. I don't like it.
We need
Nice.
a tackle.
I miss Nice there. Nice can be centre or guard, I guess.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't cover tight ends either before moving on to the offensive line. It looks like Parker Hesse has made it, but James Mitchell has been waived.
Oh, I'm gone.
James Mitchell has gone.
Yeah.
We run with 3 tight ends, Sam Laporta, Brock Wright, and Parker Hesse.
Yeah.
Actually, Sean McKeown is gone. Yeah.
Yeah, McKeown's gone. He was released.
That's a surprise to me that Mitchell didn't make it with Hesse making it. The cross-training must have done the bit.
Possibly. I think we'd see him back on the practice squad to you. I don't know if anyone would take him. Maybe. That is a surprise to me. I thought they would have kept him a little bit longer, but I guess we've had to take 10 offensive line, right? So someone's going to have lost out in there.
Yeah.
Right. And it seems we've taken... So let me check the safeties. As far as I can see, Joseph and Strickland have made it.
Looks like Strickland's made it, yes.
Strickland and Joseph have both made it, so that's an extra spot. I don't know whether he's
I also think
as a corner or not.
no, CJ Moore's gone.
CJ Moore's gone.
Okay, so
we'll get to them.
So defensive line, generally speaking, so Pico, Badder, Smith, and Pat O'Connor gone. Isaac Ukwu
gone,
which means we have no depth on the edges. It looks like we have Davenport, Pascal, Hutchinson, and Houston only.
So we've gone with 4.
We've gone with 4, with Wingo and Ozarike able to masquerade, but it's not a great position.
No.
They've been talking about it for a long time, so you have to think it's part of the plan. I hate
it. They've messed up Pascal by stop cross training them.
Yeah,
leave them where they damn well are.
Ben Neiman.
Ben Neiman is not on the list, so they've gone.
Ben Neiman has made it.
So you would assume Barnes might take more of an opportunity at outside linebacker to help with the edge rushers.
Yeah,
to help there in that department, but they've taken 6 linebackers.
And then in terms of corners, We have Carlton Davis, Terry and Arnold, Ennis Rexstraw, and Meek Robertson, Khalil Dorsey, and Kindle Vildor. So they're the outside corners. So Javelin Guidry didn't make it, Isang Bassi didn't make it, but Dorsey and Vildor did, which we expected, but it's good to see that. And Dorsey making it is a great sign for him and for this team, I think, because he's been very, very impressive. Nickel, mentioned Robertson already, but you're right, Lauren Strickland, Nickel's safety, has made it. And what a run for someone. I mean, he's maybe come the furthest in terms of probably not on the roster at all, no chance, to really getting there and putting himself amongst it. That's really impressive.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I'm trying to tweet.
No, it's fine. You go. And then on the safeties, so Branch, Kirby, Ifeatu Melifonwu, and Brandon Joseph have made it. There is a thought that Iffy is going to go to injured reserve tomorrow, but we'll see whether that transpires or not. I hope not. And then, as we talked about before, Hogan, Hassan, Jack Fox, Jake Bates makes up the team. There is a suggestion that we're down to 52 players. Tim Twentyman apparently has said we're on 52 players. I just want to double check by counting up the numbers on Pride of Detroit here a minute. 2, 6, 10, 13, 23, 28, 33, 39, 45, 50, 53. I'm counting 53, so I think that is a mistake there. And your big takeaway from this, because it does feel like there is more depth in some positions than you were thinking, a lot less in others.
Yeah. So 6 linebackers, but 3 tackles. I think this is where you take the talent. So they've taken the talent, which is the right thing to do. Isaiah Williams, talk about whether he's too like Raymond, Amon-Ra, etc. But he's talented. We've taken the talent. In the cornerback room, or safety room, we've taken Joseph and Strickland, both very talented. Both going to be a deep room in there. So we've taken the talent. And as I say, now the things you can do with these guys is if you've got to move the roster around a bit, then you can trade them, you can take them down to the practice. You can do what you want with them now, but it seems that they've just taken the talent and they'll work around their positions after that, because like that offensive line depth is scary. Your backup tackles are Manu, who is 2 years away from being ready, Dan Skipper, who's a role player, and Colby Sorsdal, who's going through a transition of his own right now. He's going into year 2 and he's not a sure thing yet, and he can't play left tackle. So that immediately jumps out as a concern. But on the interior, you're looking pretty good, to be fair. Nisa has earned his spot. Awashika we know is good. We can do plenty in there. I would expect to see a lot of those offensive linemen. What?
No, just that the Vikings have released Lewis Seen.
Oh wow. Kwesi really can't draft. But yeah, it seems they've taken the talent, like the more readily available one. The ones that would struggle to get through to the practice squad, I feel like they've kept. So, but there is some severe issues of depth in some places here. Tackle on the offensive line, tackle on the defensive line. But they've gone heavy where they've gone heavy on the O-line depth. They've gone heavy on linebackers. They've gone heavy on safeties. But like say, if he is going to IR, explains why that'll be one less safety on the books, and we'll need both of them on the roster. So it's intriguing to start with, but overall, they're 53 guys who are going to be getting us towards the Super Bowl. Every single one of them has my unwavering support. We hope that they can go all the way, but I expect a lot of moves to be made still. This is definitely not going to be the 53 that starts against the Rams.
So when we're looking at the position groups, we're fairly clear on a tackle being a need, I think.
Yeah.
What about the other positions? I think edge looks like it has to be a need when Kaminsky goes. X wide receiver is always going to be a consideration. Potentially a backup nose tackle might be a thought, maybe. And Pico
won't be subject to waivers, will he? He's a vet.
No.
So my guess would be if Broderick's going to be out like a month or something, they bring back Pico to the practice squad and keep elevating him, and they run out his elevations, and then hopefully Broderick's ready to go or DJ Reader's ready to go by the time that happens. So I think you'll see some tactical stuff here with the practice squad. I reckon with some of the vested vets, they will have handshake deals almost to say, right, look, you're going to come back. This is the plan for you, going forward, etc. Probably the same with the tackles. I wouldn't be surprised to see Jacoby Jones come back, get a little bit more time on our system, get a little bit of time on the practice squad, and if one of Decker or Poole goes down, we can elevate him straight up to start on a game day if we're still not quite sold on Sorsdal at the time. So, like I say, the practice squad I think is going to be more interesting than the 53. Like a lot of the 53, we knew what was going to happen already, but the practice squad makeup's going to be critical for us if we can sneak enough of these talented guys through.
Yeah, I tend to think that you're right.
Did we put Strickland on our 53? Did we sneak him on?
Yeah.
So we called that Strickland and Joseph.
Oh. No, we're
we
wrong.
got him on.
No, we didn't. We did. What did we do?
We put Joseph on, so we got Brandon Joseph.
He was safety 3 apparently over Ifeatu Melifonwu, which hurt my heart. The ones we got wrong. Let's review the ones we got wrong. We had Donovan Peoples-Jones.
That was reluctantly, though.
Very reluctantly. We had James Mitchell over Parker Hesse.
Yeah, got that wrong.
Jamarco Jones, Kingsley Aguakun, Mitchell Agude. We didn't get Ben Neiman in. We didn't get Lauren Strickland in. We got Stephen Gilmore wrong, but everyone else we got right.
We didn't put Neiman in because we didn't think we'd take a linebacker 6.
Yeah.
He would have been in there otherwise.
I think we did a pretty good job.
Yeah, we did all right.
I think when the Lions said that they have 5 players up for grabs, we already had kind of 47 or 48 locks in ourselves, and we put 5 in. And of the 5 we put in, I think we got 3 of the 5 right. But our 48s were not the same as the Lions' 48. So I think that's clear from what's happened. You know, we didn't have Dan Skipper in. We didn't have Michael Neese in. So quite a few have. So Justin Rogers has just said Lions have 52 on the roster, something still coming down the pipe. So clearly I can't add.
And you're an accountant. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, no one's hiring me for my mathematical ability. It's not like I did a degree in it or anything. So there is speculation in our own Discord that a trade for a wide receiver is impending. So we will see what happened. Brent said, did we lose a roster spot when our international player got injured? 17 down to 16. I mean, the IPP player can now play, can't he? But so technically, I guess in the practice squad, yes, but...
The IPP player means you can have 54 players, doesn't it? I thought he doesn't count against your roster. He can be a 54th man, technically. So, no, you don't. You lose that 54th spot with the IPP player. But he's done for the season, so that's just not going to happen. Take Reece Sammet, make NFL UK
happy. I'd love it. I think he'd be a big get, to be honest, for us. I'm just so high on what he might be able to do in the league. I suspect he'll sign with the practice squad at Kansas City. I think they'll like him enough to do that. Jeremy Reisman, of course, has tweeted about Kyle Pico. So he said, this strikes me as the reason Pico is cut. Once the Lions put Kaminsky on IR in 24 hours' time, which means he'll be eligible to return, Pico, I am speculating, would then re-sign with Detroit, which would give us the depth that
handshake agreement. It's always the way with it. You've got to tactically do it so that you can take as many people with you as possible.
Mike the Marine is asking us if we can show the 53-man roster, but I think I would feel bad showing someone else's content on screen.
Why don't you just adapt the one we did the other day?
Yeah, I can do that. Give me a second then, and I will sort that out. So, and you might have to ad-lib for just a minute.
Ad-libbing's what I do best. If I've got some questions to work on.
Guys, get some questions in, please.
So yeah, we talked about the roster spot one, Jacoby Jones. We talked about how long is Martin out for. We don't know how long Martin's out for, but it's a minimum 4 weeks now, I guess. So that's the bye. So you'll not see him until week 5 as a minimum. Uku's gone. Yeah, is Jake and gone? Sorry, you did say Jake Fromm is on that list of gone, isn't he?
Jake Fromm's gone.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. Be interesting to see. I don't know. Maybe I think Sudfeld's a lock to bring the practice squad spot, so I don't know if we'll see him again. But yeah, land of opportunity here for a team going to the Super Bowl potentially. Like say, Lauren Strickland, Brandon Joseph, Parker Hesse, Michael Neese, Isaiah Williams. There's a lot of guys here who've made the roster against odds. I think against odds is a way to say you wouldn't have instantly put them in there right away. So, again, a lot of vets have been taken out the window for this. You think sometimes they might go safe, put the vets in there, but DPJ's gone, Jacoby Jones is gone, Greg Smith's gone, CJ Moore gone, and they've gone with the guys, the younger ones who've earned it. So, a little bit of a risk with this, but the safety room will be interesting. I'm assuming they will make good and play Branch at safety with Joseph, and then you've got other Joseph, that's going to be confusing, and Strickland to back them up while if he's injured. Because that'll be what the room is, really. So, but I guess there'll be a lot of interchange in between all those. You should play some of the nickel guys back there as well if you want. So, but look, yeah, looks like very much like Branch is going to be a safety, which I don't know. I'd rather him play nickel, but you do the formation stuff. Mike goes, are we going to run a 5-2 and a 4-3? Who would you put in as our 5-2? Going to do a 5-2? We ain't got enough players to do a 5-2, have we?
Well, we haven't got a nose. Apart from we've got Reader. We've got Reader, so we could do.
So you'd
Reader,
play Reader,
Levi, and Aline.
Levi, Hutch,
Pascal or Davenport.
Yeah, I guess you could. And then your 2 would be. Oh, I don't know. Would you play Campbell and Anzalone together? I mean, if you're going heavy blitz, you put Barnes in there as well. Jesus. You could really do some funky stuff there with that. I mean, given the lack of depth, maybe at the minute on the D-line, I wouldn't be putting 5 of them out there at once. I'd probably go with the 4, but I don't know. I could be right. Especially, like you say, a lack of a true nose at the minute would be tough. I guess you could put Barnes up there in that conversation. If you want to play Barnes outside linebacker, he could take one of those spots as well. So, because they do play him a little bit on the D-line as well. Not much, but a little. Lisa, they vetoed that extra spot on the team for a QB3 that's not part of the 53 got vetoed by the league. So, yeah, you can't do that anymore. Not by the league, by the NFLPA, sorry, the Players Association vetoed it. I assume, Matt, that is to stop QBs getting screwed out of a paycheck? Instead of paying them a practice squad, is that, or is there much difference? Because it seems weird that the NFLPA have done that, not letting another, but would they get paid less?
No, the league vetoed it. It wasn't the PA.
It said the NFLPA. It said vetoed it.
Oh, that isn't how I understood it. So I don't know.
I would assume though, if they have vetoed it, it would be for pay purposes. They'd rather someone be on a 53 getting paid more than a practice squad.
Yeah,
but yeah, it got vetoed. So yeah, you can't do that no more.
So on your screen is the depth chart as it stands. Green is in, grey is out. Red letters means that they are on reserve.
See, my bestie agrees with me. Brent's put it in, and me and Brent agree on everything. So, Brent says it, then I'm right.
Fair enough. There we go. So there you go, Mike. I hope that helps your thoughts on this. I know it's not the biggest words in the world, but if you want to get all the names in the screen, then there it is. Brian said the NFLPA wants you to commit to a roster spot, not only pay, but for years of service ramifications. That makes sense. I mean, if a player accrues a season, that's a quarter of the way towards getting your pension. If you don't get 4 accrued seasons, you're not a veteran. If you're not a veteran, you don't get your pension. And for a lot of these guys, they don't necessarily have the skills that they need in order to have an easy life outside of the NFL when it comes to running a trade or anything like that, running a business or getting a job. So getting your pension as a player is a big deal when you're at the bottom of the roster. If you are a guy always trying to hang on to the 53, you want to get your 4 years. So I kind of sympathize with the NFLPA there.
Yeah, like if you want that depth, then pay for it. If you don't want that depth, then take the risk. I can back that. It's a shame for us, but you know, it happens.
It does happen. I'm just looking at this, and we've run with 3 tight ends before. I don't like it. I think it feels light.
I mean, you would assume we'll get guys back to. You would assume McKeown will make the practice squad. Mitchell should technically, but it does feel like a position where you can bring in a. I mean, Zylstra probably come back as well.
Yeah.
Let's not forget Zylstra's there. So I think this is just a case of getting the depth through into the practice squad and getting them. If you like, I say, the practice squad this year, every single player on it should have a legitimate purpose for the first time in forever, unless Sudfeld, if he gets on there. But I think we'll be fine. I mean, Laporta and Laporta's the epitome of health. So just got to hope he stays upright all year.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, let's flip this another way. What rooms are complete? What doesn't need any work?
Quarterback, running back, tight end, for this intents and purpose, linebacker, corner, safety. So I would say receiver, offensive line, defensive line would be the ones that need work. I think everything else is fine.
So Lisa's asking about Lawrence Strickland. So he was a defensive back from Ball State. He was a UDFA in 2023. So 2024 NFL draft. Didn't get drafted. We picked him up after game 1 of preseason. Trying to remember my timeline now. Hang on.
He's been here a while. I'm pretty sure he was here for joint practices with the Giants.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think. I could be wrong. 13th of May we signed him. So he's been here all summer.
He's been here all summer. Okay.
I thought he had.
Fair enough.
He signed a 3-year deal with us.
So the thing with Strickland was that he had nickel versatility, but was more regarded as a safety. He's 5'10", and just a shade over 200 pounds. So he's not a light safety, but he's not a heavy safety. He's mid-sized. He's not too small, but 5'9" would be really short. 5'10", if that is what he is about as small as you can get for a safety that can play in this league. But he's been repping a bit more at nickelback, and given that between Arnold, Davis, Vildor, and Dorsey, you don't have any real nickel versatility. With Rakestraw, you have someone who potentially is your outside corner 3, who's going to be repping fairly regularly on the outside, and a Meek starting in the nickel, presumably. You do need someone who can step in at nickel who isn't Brian Branch, because you might want to keep him at safety. So Strickland having that nickel versatility is important. And then potentially he's been the most impressive UDFA defender in the class for our team. So there was a lot said about his tackle ability, especially the fact that he's basically a missile. He sees ball and he hits ball. Like, you saw it especially against Pittsburgh. He had a couple of reps where he had you wincing a bit, like it might be unnecessary roughness, because he does seem to just hammer people, but it's the sort of thing that you can just see Dan Campbell falling in love with. So in a way, I'm not surprised. But then, Anne, it wouldn't surprise me if there had to be a domino to fall, that he might be that guy, and you just say, well, Rakestraw has to be the backup, or Branch has to just come down, and we have to live with that.
Yeah, yeah. It just, like I say, it gives you a lot more versatility in the backfield there. But you've got, with Iffy, 3 good safeties. He might not be ready right away, but Joseph and Strickland can develop in peace, and you can bring them in as and when you need them. And this is the right idea, right? Because this year, it's year 3 of Kirby. It's potentially last year of Iffy. You're potentially down the line going to have issues with your safety depth room and that. So it's good for us to get these guys in the room early, to get them seeing some game time, get developing the depth for that position. So if for some reason, if he doesn't work out this year, not saying he won't, but if he doesn't, and Kirby doesn't take his 3rd year, bounce back up, and you've got issues going into next year, you've got established depth, and you just need to find some new starters in there. It helps. So, I think he's earned it. Like you said, he's very powerful. He hits hard. He's been good against the run. He's the epitome of kind of what you want back there. And again, you're not going to need to see him that much. You're not going to need to see either of them that much to start with, but it's good to have them there if you need them. CJ Moore, unfortunately, I think has just his age has come and gone. He's in a bygone age now. He's a bit older. We want to create a bit of a youth movement there.
Timmy Birch just asking whether Craig Reynolds made it. Yes, he did. Nate Custard pointed out that I still had DPJ on there. Sorry, I was manually doing it on the fly, and, well, I missed it. Thanks for the save. Yes, Lawrence Strickland, 3 years, $2.8 million, so cheap as chips. But you're right, that safety position long-term is a concern. We're paying all of these guys. Hopefully Aleem gets the bag. Then you're going to be paying JMO. You've got to maybe think about paying Ifeatu Melifonwu. The way this preseason has gone, maybe if he just plays out his contract and then he goes, which would be really sad. Brandon coming through is great, but he's going to take a while still. Kirby's not got very long left, and you're paying a lot of your own guys already.
So you've got to have your succession in place. And that's potentially what these two are.
Or not even you have to have your succession in place, because of course you can draft to replace. But you've got to try. You've got to build the depth for this season to say, we think these guys can be adequate depth if they develop a bit. And then if it doesn't work, that's when you draft. Because the league is full of UDFAs and day 3 picks who made it against the odds. And if you don't try, they don't make it. So 49ers cut Logan Thomas and Tracy Walker, both formerly of the Lions, and Nick Williams.
Wick Nilliams.
Sorry.
Don't say his name. Don't say his name, or he appears. He does. He has done before.
He has done before, yeah.
No. If I see even any jokes about bringing him back, that will be met with the sternest of responses. May as well just go get Danny Shelton and the rest of the crew back while we're at it.
Snacks! Bring back Snacks!
Go even further. Screw it. What's Nick Fairley up to these days?
I'm pretty sure that the guy whose jersey I'm wearing is still available.
So, I mean, is he retired yet?
I don't think he ever posted on Twitter a retirement message, but I don't know whether that means he actually retired or not. I mean, he's making enough bloody appearances on Sky Sports. Michael Poet says Broderick Martin is on IR, I think, so that makes 52 on the roster. So Broderick, yes, is on IR. You are correct. Thank you. Right, let me... Oh, I've done it for DJ Reader as well. Didn't mean to do that. Put him back to green. Okay, let me just highlight the people who've made it.
The Browns kept all 4 of their quarterbacks.
Because they think they can get him for trade bait.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, someone will probably give like a 3rd round pick for Jameis Winston. I bet they will when they get desperate at quarterback.
Well, Lisa says Sue's not retired, so get ready for that.
Sue!
As long as he's starting behind. Hang on, Vita Vea got released recently, didn't he? Let's go for Vita Vea.
No, Vea's never been released.
Has he not?
No.
Oh, I thought he was getting old.
Vea's still one of the best players in the league.
Oh.
Yes, 52 people. Count 52. That's what I've got at the bottom here. So you are right, 52 people. Brian Shook said, iffy injury situation, ? Dan was very cryptic last I heard of him. It appears as though Iffy is struggling with an injury, yes, but it depends whether they think it's going to be more than 4 games. And we've played this game before with Iffy. I think it was his 1st or 2nd season where they were basically like, we don't know how long he's going to be. And do you remember, they never put him on IR, but it took him about 9 or 10 games to come back, and then he didn't look like himself.
I'm pretty sure they put him on it eventually.
I'm
pretty sure they had about 3 games where they didn't put him on it, and then they put him on it, and they kind of gave up with it. The thing is, if he is hurt for any large part of this season, then for me that almost makes him redundant because he's in a contract year, and if he's going to miss the majority of this season, he's not going to show us enough to justify a new contract. So what do you do with him? Do we give him snaps knowing full well he might leave at the end of the year, which takes snaps away from our other safeties? Or because then you just give all the snaps to Kirby and Branch, and then you would want Strickland and Joseph to see some as well. Because again, you don't want to really give snaps to a guy who's out the door. It's a shame for him, really. But if he needs a full, consistent season of good quality play to justify a bigger contract, unless he's willing to take a smaller one here, which then I'd be amenable to for the long term, because then he'd become a depth piece, but you just don't know how he's feeling or how it's going to work out at this point, but it's the worst possible thing for him.
I'm just trying to find a good resource that lists all of the cuts, not by team, but by position, because that would be just the most useful when it comes to...
Lisa's right. They might do a prove-it deal with him, but again, you'd be very iffy about the injury history if he missed another lot of his this year. So I'm not sure. Oh, Brian just goes, confusing with Ika. No, but good job you mentioned Siaki Ika, because 16 months ago, whatever, before that draft he was in, and everyone was saying, maybe we should get him, and I said, no, he's terrible.
And then me and Ash both did the tape work on him when we were doing the rookie tape reviews before the draft. And we both came to the same conclusion you did, that he was a waste of space, he was too heavy for his own good. He literally couldn't get off the ball quickly enough. People were saying, he can move so fast for a man of his size. And it's like, a man of his size really shouldn't be playing in the NFL. They should be losing weight. It's harsh to say, but he was like 380, 90 pounds. Like...
He had a 35% missed tackle rate, so...
Yeah, that's because he literally couldn't move sideways.
Which is not good for a DT. Lisa says, what about Mosley? Did Mosley go on to IR with
Mosley's on
Broderick?
IR.
Mosley and Broderick are both on the IR designated to return.
Yeah.
So nobody knows how seriously injured he is, but again, my thing, if it's not a strain, which is 6 weeks, anything over that, then I just don't see the point.
I don't think they would have put him on the designated to return list if they weren't confident he was going to return. Yeah. So with Broderick, they put him on the designated return because he takes up a spot. When teams have 8 in-season IR returns to have, they have 8. But if they put people on IR in this position, they lose the ability to return anyone else apart from those 2 of the 8. So of the 8, it's now only 6 plus Broderick and Mosley, which removes the flexibility. So if they get 7 other key injuries, all of whom can return this year, but they're going to be out for 4 games or more, one of them they can't put on IR. They're just going to have to carry them. And I mean, obviously, you'd have to be very injured to suffer that, but teams do. Teams do get that injured, and they're out for a month, 6 weeks, and you want to put them on IR and get someone in the interim. And
Well, because Kamish is going to go on IR, presumably with one to come back, so you're already down to 5.
no, but the thing is, when you go on IR in season, it doesn't take up a spot, because if you don't return them, it doesn't matter. But when they're put
it
on,
counts as bringing one. He's a guy coming back from IR, though, isn't he?
no. But what I mean is, if Kamish is injured for the rest of the season, he doesn't count as a person who is designated to return, because he don't designate.
If he does come back,
yes, sure, then that takes up a spot for sure.
Then that's 5.
And if he might be 1, and that brings it down to 4.
4. So you're already potentially running out of IR bringer back as if these guys, and you've got to save some of it. Does it redo? Is that just regular season or is that playoffs too? Does it rehash for the playoffs? I believe it rehashes for the playoffs, doesn't it?
What, IR returns?
Do you get extras for that,
No.
or does it include playoffs?
No, includes
No,
playoffs.
so you've got to be careful for an even longer season. Then you've got to be really careful.
Just trying to see if any of the trackers are really updated enough, but they're not. Even the NFL.com one isn't frustrated.
Still learning the game.
Okay.
Still so much to learn.
We are at 10 p.m. in the UK here, so I think maybe we give a few more takes and think about ending this one in the next 15-20 minutes or so, guys. If you've got any questions for us, please get them in, as you are doing at the moment, but any more questions, that'd be really good. I mean, edge for me has to be a consideration. I'm with Ant. I don't want, even though they have the versatility to do so, you don't want to confuse things for your young players. Levi has never played at the edge. He could, but he is a nose to a 5, not really a 7. And then you have Meki Wingo, who can play at the edge, but he's much better probably at 3 to 5 tech, and he's a literal 6th round rookie. Like, have you seen what's happened when you try and put too much on the plate of some of these young guys? We tried to put some of these outside linebackers at Sam, or edge players at Sam. They couldn't handle it, and now they're off the roster because they weren't able to develop in the position which we actually wanted them to play primarily. Don't overload Wingo by trying to get him to play at the edge, which means, if we run with that logic, we've only got 4 edge players, and I hear Ant in terms of trying to say, if you want Houston to develop as a run defender, you have to play him.
Ooh.
But the idea that with one injury to Davenport, Hutchinson, or Pascal, you're playing Houston quite often and have to live with him as a run defender, that's not ideal.
No. Elijah Mitchell's out for the year.
Yikes.
Puts the 49ers running back room in a bit of jeopardy. He's the running back 2.
Mm.
Trying to find
Yeah, thanks, Lisa.
Have other teams come out yet? Trying to see anyone who's been cut.
It's not easy, is it, to find this stuff out? Huron Mark M said, preaching to the choir. Fair play, man. Appreciate that.
See, it's good when you're on your own team and you've got loads of inside sources. Don't have any for anybody else. It's a pain. Oh, Sue's tweeting.
Who's tweeting?
Sue's tweeting.
Okay.
He's
In
talking
what
about
way?
private equity. He's talking about the private equity thing.
I saw that apparently with the private equity deal that there's private equity instruments, pension funds, that sort of thing, willing to invest $12 billion in the league.
That's why they want to do it.
Insane.
Yep.
Danny Rogers tweeted 7 minutes ago, the Lions primary reporter, especially on social media. Says Lions roster moves are out. One move that will keep me up tonight, the Kyle Pico release. He was kept being told that he had shown enough by the team, was repping with the ones while Reader was out, and his return obviously impacted Pico, but for depth purposes, also shows how good of a position Detroit's D-line is in. If the team is telling him that Pico, that he has shown enough to be on this team, you have to think he's coming back. Because I don't anticipate the team lying to his face about that sort of thing.
Yeah. You would assume that he's going to be back there. Oh, wow. Seen this thing about the Packers 2020 draft class?
No.
Everybody is off bar... Well, AJ Dillon's on there, but he's injured for the season. He's not going to play a snap. And then that's the Jordan Love draft. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 picks. Only 2 of them are left on the team. One of them's on IR. And one's Jordan Love, who's been given the biggest QB contract ever for 6 good games of play. Whoops.
That is insane.
Sucks to not have Brad Holmes. Just trying to find anyone else who's... Yeah, appreciate you all who are in the building.
Thank you, everyone who's giving us props. Appreciate you being with us all this time.
Brent thinks Amik's going to get 5 to 7 receptions.
Interceptions. I think
Jesus.
that's quite high.
I'll take that bet with you, Brent. I'll be nice about Army for an entire show if that happens. And it's not, so.
So the Lions are naturally going to have a lower interception rate than the rest of the NFL because we have one of the highest rates of man coverage in the league. And when you play man coverage, you're not watching the quarterback. If you're not watching the quarterback, it's hard to catch the bloody ball. So it's one of those, when you're a nickel and you're facing some of these shifty wide receivers, it's hard to have eyes on the QB. Like, I am always going to take the under on Detroit interceptions while this regime's in place, while this defensive coordinator's in place. Aaron Glenn doesn't want to do anything apart from play run defense, play blitz, play man coverage. That is his identity. And it doesn't lend itself to making picks. It lends itself to making bad throws by forcing pressure. And, maybe he calls a few more zone blitzes, but it's not something that you can easily predict. And it's so lucky as well. It's something which moves year to year very considerably.
Yeah, absolutely. Bears cut list is out. Who is good on there?
Lisa said, we will see Matthew Kirby will have 4. Well, in man coverage, at least in cover 2 man or in 2 high, the safeties are in zone. So they are the ones who will get those picks a bit more often than anyone else. But corner, linebacker, it's difficult. But Kirby is a fine shout. Kirby getting 4, I can absolutely see.
Oh, and I'm still going with my preseason prediction of who's getting the most interceptions. Hutch.
Think he gets more than 3 that he got in his rookie season?
Yeah, I think. First defensive end ever, 10 interceptions, 20 plus sacks. Though saying that, if we did, we'd have to pay him literally the entire salary cap for the year he was going to get paid if he put up those sort of numbers. We wouldn't be able to pay anybody else.
Another Danny Rogers tweet about Lawrence Strickland. I love Strickland's story. He started at D2 University of Indy before transferring to Ball State, where no one really knew he was a walk-on. Had to pay his own way and struggled for a second, but believed in himself enough to test at Pro Day and tested really well. Violent Aaron Glenn guy with a big hint of humility. We love it. #Lions. Love to hear.
Yeah.
Here's a preseason prediction for you. Branch is the interception leader on the team, and I think he's the one that gets 7 or more. I think Branch would have a shot to be Defensive Player of the Year and lead the league in interceptions. That's more like it.
Or would it be potential to say Hot Say be sack leader? Imagine that could be Iffy. That'd be Iffy. If Iffy was healthy, I'd put Iffy in as maybe sack leader.
Oh, what over Hutch?
Hutch will get a lot of sacks, but I reckon we like those DB blitzers. Iffy got a lot of success with them last year, so it depends who they're going to use in that role this year. Maybe because Branch they blitz Branch, do they not?
They
He has
did
been
bring
blitzed in the
him on
past.
nickel blitzes a fair bit, so they could just bring him on safety blitzes.
Yeah, I think we'll see Branch coming up, and because I think was it Jeff Risdon said he'd see Barnes been second in the sack listings this year.
Yeah.
You could see him being the second overall sack master. So obviously they're not predicting anything big from any of the other edges. So that title's out there. Sack master after Hutch. That could be an intriguing one. Who gets the most sacks after Hutch?
Who gets the most sacks after Hutch?
Hogan Hatton from linebacker.
I mean, I'm just going to take the low-hanging fruit. I think it's Aleem.
Yeah, I think Aleem could very well be up there. Hopefully, after we've paid him.
Many thanks to some of the people who have subscribed on YouTube very recently. Sleep is optional. And then Daniel G just a moment ago. Thank you very much. Daniel G says, "What's up, fellas? Hey, man.
Hey.
Thanks for watching. You have a long show, which we are just winding down from, but it's been an interesting cut down day. It has... Well, there's been some surprises, and let's talk about those surprises just before we go away. So we've spoken about Strickland. Ben Neiman, I guess we said we weren't going to keep 6, but we have kept 6. Skipper, Nice, Hesser. I mean,
Brandon Joseph is a success story if he sticks to the roster. Because like I said, a good team's practice squad is there to develop its depth for the future. Like you have your guys who are not quite ready just yet, who need a little bit of refinement, who need some time away with NFL coaching to eliminate the bad stuff out of the game, and then eventually you bleed them through into the first team. Now you don't get first teamers out of it really, but you get that critical depth you need that you can't find everywhere, and it's homegrown by your coaching. And the most successful teams seem to do that. And Brandon Joseph, hopefully, will be the first of many who comes through that way, because he's a very talented safety. College career went a little off rails, but his talent was never in question. It's just at the next level, there were things he needed to work on in his game, and it looks like that's come to fruition. He's had a year. It looks like he's improved in nearly all facets of his game, and he's ready to go now. So hopefully this is the start of a good precedent going forward, where our practice squad guys bleed through and become the depth of the team, which, it's critical. It's just as critical as having good drafts. That is to creating long-term success. I mean, who did it better than the Patriots for years? Like, how many special teams aces and reserve backup guys did they bring through their practice squad who were Patriot players because that's all they'd ever known? And that was the backbone of their success. So hopefully we're going to do similar now.
I'm made up for Dan Skipper making another 53. I mean, I don't want him to take tackle reps. I'm fine taking him taking guard reps because I think he can do that. I think he's shown the ability to do that. But having someone like him being able to be that big sixth offensive lineman really does change what we're able to do in our run game. And he's such a likable character. I mean, what he can do to that crowd, I mean, he makes the best Taylor Decker impression you can imagine. That's worth something.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You say it just seems to be... This is the land of opportunity for a lot of players now. Doesn't matter where you come from, what your stock is, how good on paper you appear. It's what you go out and do on the field and how much work and effort you put in. And they say it's... For a team that's going to a Super Bowl, there are a lot of surprises maybe on here. There are a lot of young guys who've worked their way onto this roster, which you wouldn't generally expect. Usually from this, you'd be seeing a lot of veterans coming in, trying to make a veteran-heavy team which can sort of deal with the pressure and has maybe been to the playoffs before and been in some of those bigger games, and you're hoping there can be something. Whereas we've kind of gone the opposite way. We've kind of hit the youth movement button in a year we're expecting to go to the Super Bowl, but it's because they've earned it. And that's the other way to go in this is to, this is their mantra. And if they want to win a Super Bowl, they've got to stick loyally to that mantra. Otherwise, it all falls apart. So, when we say, this is the land of opportunity, it is literally the land of opportunity.
Yeah, I completely agree. Right. Are you happy with us calling it there?
I think so, unless anyone else has got anything they want to ask really quickly before we get out of here. But no doubt, as soon as we go off, a trade will happen or something. But
I'm sure it will shortly, but that will just be something we cover in our next show, I guess.
yeah, I'd say a lot of moves are going to happen before that. There's going to be probably 3 or 4 different names on the 53 by the time we get back to this. So, but no, it's been fun, and it's good to see the team initially, which it means the season's right around the corner. So, football's nearly back. We got what, 10 days? 10 days, and then we get to stay up till 5 in the morning, watching football again. I mean, what's not to love about that?
I was right about what we're going to do next week. So Monday next week is our season prediction show. Later on that week is the week 1 preview show versus Rams, and then we'll be live during the game. It is only a week away. 2 weeks away, but it's 13 days, no, 12 days away.
Yeah.
Shit.
The accountant needs to get his maths going.
Who? Run DMG said, any chance we pull in the other St. Brown? If you said to me that we were going to sign him to the practice squad, I wouldn't hate it, but I don't like it either. If you told me he's going to be signed to the 53, I'd be throwing something. I'd be really upset.
A tantrum.
He's just not good enough. He's shown it at multiple stops. Like, I think we have to sign him at some point just so he can complete the NFC North Wheel of Pain. But, like...
Yeah, after we've won a Super Bowl and we blow it all up and start from scratch again, then maybe. But...
We'll sign him to the practice squad the day before the Super Bowl when we win so the St. Brown brothers can both have a fucking ring.
And John can wear the same jersey, not one of them horrible half and halves.
Yeah, that's fair.
And
all right, guys, we are going to call it there. Do check out Ant and Ryan on the Cottage Show later in the week. Otherwise, we'll see you next Monday for the season prediction show. And cheers, buddy. This was a cool show. And we had almost 100 live people on YouTube, so that's pretty awesome. Anyway, guys in the chat, thank you for sticking with us all this time. Appreciate you. See you soon. 53, 52 is done. Trading coming. Let's go, lads. One pride.
One pride. Take care, all.